one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right.
Give me 1 second. We're down a secretary.
Uh-oh.
Okay, we're guessing that's working. Not really sure. All right, so, you know we do it every time anyways. Let's get a motion to open the meeting.
I'll make that motion to open the meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed. Okay. All right, first up on our agenda tonight is 208. And,
Are you switching up with it?
yes,
Okay.
we switched it just because
Privilege of the
Natalie,
chair.
it's the only thing she's doing tonight, so. And we weren't sure 208 would be on there because we had a conflict on who was coming, if anybody. So we put them at the back of the bus first, now they're in front of us.
All right, makes sense.
Except their people.
Might have thought they had a few more minutes than me.
So we'll come back to them. So
Yes,
Natalie, hang out with us and
Sure.
we'll come back to that.
No problem.
Well, come on.
Is Terry not here?
No. Yeah. You can
All the
work
best
day
laid
with-
attentions, you know, we tried, Natalie.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
That's cool.
What happens when you so try?
That's okay.
Marilyn was gonna sit there, but then she thought better of it.
No way.
Okay. All right, so let's go to, is someone here from 30 Mill Pond for,
That's me.
that's you. Come on up and just, you can come right to the podium there. This way, if everything's working the way it should, you're being recorded,
Ooh,
which is
I've
great.
never done that before. I'm actually stage fright. Okay.
Yeah, don't
It's
worry.
all
Don't
right.
be.
I have more documents that I just got earlier that I wasn't able to submit. I sent an email to Terry's here.
She's not here, so before you go further, just tell us your name and spell your last name.
Sure. My name is Bracha Gluck, Gluck. I go by Mimi, M-I-M-I.
Excellent, Mimi. That's much easier. Thank you. So you submitted, and what didn't you submit? What do you have in your hands there?
So I have the engineering drawings with my company name on it and also the parking information.
I'm not sure we need the engineer drawings because we have them.
No,
No, I think
No?
she has revised
Here.
ones.
Oh,
Let me
revised
steal a
for,
copy.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah. So. I'll let you have one.
And
Okay,
what else do you have there, Mimi?
so,
Okay, you can just put that over here. Yeah. Okay.
I have.
Yep. we just have to check it.
Note of operating hours. Do you need that? I mean.
6 days a week, right?
Was requested.
Yeah, if you went through the
It's on
effort,
the
we'll take it. We
Yeah.
don't really, yeah.
Okay? And
Sure.
then the project narrative. I made 3 copies of each.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so Jeff, just so you're aware, this appears to be an updated site plan. I see that it's signed by engineer Cleverly from NJS Engineering. I'm fairly confident. I had some conversations with the building department earlier, and I'm sure the applicant got our comment memos. Just a quick look, it looks like it addresses a lot of our comments. It has a parking calculation with the Pilates studio versus the restaurant. It looks like she is right, there's an hours of operation. So I'm fairly certain that a number of our comments that are on our comment memo would be
Address.
addressed.
So why don't we do this then? Why don't we go through the comments and let's just see where we come out.
Can I just, did you circulate this, did you give Terry this by email?
I did.
Okay, perfect. What I would suggest is, unless looking at this for the nature of the project, we could have Terry this week send it off for 239 to get that rolling.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So Liz, do you want to start with your comments?
Sure, give me 1 second.
Yeah, take your time. So Mimi, why don't you, it's your first time here, why don't you just tell us while Elizabeth's looking through her comments and comparing what you just gave to her, that may answer those and make our life easier.
So,
Just tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
okay, sure. So I'm not sure if you know what it is, but I did add a picture in my file. So I want to do 12 reformer beds. I don't know, I'm sure you know what it is. And it's a form of exercise that you don't have it yet in this area, and it's really like the thing to do. And I ordered 12 reformer beds and a couple of other, like equipment, not big stuff, smaller stuff. And its classes are 50 minutes, and it's 12 people maximum per class.
So you do a class in the bed?
Yeah, it's like removing.
My kind of exercise.
No, it's much harder, it's not that.
They're not laying down on it. I think it's that easy.
Trust me, it's hard. So yeah.
Okay, that's
All
great.
right,
And you do it now, you currently do it? You have a location now?
No, I currently do the exercise, but I spoke to people in this area, and there's nothing here. And I did research, right? There's one in Goshen, one in Warwick, and there's nothing here. So it's really good. So the reason why I want to do it is because people can do it like from the 18 till the 80,
Oh,
and
yeah.
90. Like you can do it at any age.
Mhm.
And it's really good, like if you have muscle pain or blah, 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 it's really, really effective for many, reasons.
Okay, that's
Okay.
great.
Yeah, and everyone I've talked to the girls that work here, and they were so excited, because it's really.
They knew what it was?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Northern Jersey is one of the closer ones. Rocky,
Yeah.
my girlfriend, my
Yeah.
fiance.
Wasn't this gonna be the new restaurant?
It was.
And I guess that's gone by the wayside apparently.
They never came back. I think you were a little hard on them.
I don't think it was financial reasons.
Yeah.
okay.
It usually is.
I do have my comment memo
Okay.
up. Okay, unfortunately, 239 referral is required, I think, based on the plan set, that they're sufficient to, the plan set that was just submitted is sufficient to send. So I would instruct Terry to send those this week. We have a land use determination, and since my comment memo, Building Inspector Watkins issued a revised land use determination that it is a recreational facility indoor, not a membership club, which once you looked at the membership club standards, you'd go, oh, it's really not a membership club. Also, unfortunately, it is a special use permit, which does require a public hearing. Just as a FYI, the SBL referenced on the application materials, and we've had multiple applications on this property over the years, is actually listed as 125 Stage Road. So it technically has two addresses, so just be aware of that. And the record owner is listed as 30 Mill Pond LLC.
How could it be on Stage Road?
Because there's a little teeny piece that cuts all the way through. It's like 5 feet wide. I like triple checked it.
Really?
Yes.
Years ago, I think you could actually drive straight through from the other side.
Yeah.
I wouldn't use that for your mailing address. I don't think they'll find it.
I'm just, I searched 30 Mill Pond, it wouldn't come up. I searched, and I was like, what? And then I typed in I found the SBL, typed in the SBL, and
Really?
yeah, it's the same building. So just heads up. This is probably been 80 to 90% satisfied. The applicant has submitted a previous site plan. Obviously, that's negated by the site plan that was handed up. The site plan requirements are set forth in 200-72I. The applicant to address signage in accordance with the code. If it's a pure replacement, then that's okay. If there's new signage, we need to talk about that. Applicant to address sufficiency of parking. There is a parking calculation. Dave will need to review that. And then in addition to the specific requirements set forth in 200-57, which applies to the indoor recreation facility, the planning board is to evaluate the project against the special permit standards, which are in 200-84.2. And those are just your general,
I have some comments on that. So the sign, I'm just replacing what's currently
Same
there.
size?
Yeah.
okay.
And the parking spots, I actually spoke with the engineer, but his last name.
Cleverly.
Okay, thank you. And he told me that it's there are 7 parking spots. So,
Okay. Yeah, and we'll review that too. I'm sure if you said that, it's probably true. Okay?
am I missing anything?
Nope, I don't,
No.
doesn't look like it. We're
I had-
just,
Had a couple of things that might be worth just reviewing, just to make sure we didn't skip over anything.
yeah,
So I had on here a completed application with all applicable pages completed should be provided. I think there were some, either sections or pages missing from the application that we had. So again, just make sure that the application is complete. The site plan we just kind of talked about, looks like the plan that was submitted, I think is going to address the vast majority of what I had in my letter here.
so pause 1 second there, Dave. So you can call Terry
Okay,
and just ask her to look at your application
okay.
and ask her what's missing or incomplete. There might be a couple of incomplete things is what Dave's saying.
Like, okay.
Yeah, I forget, I mean, I had looked at,
Like from an engineer's point of view, like,
there were, I mean, the comment says basically the application with all applicable pages completed should be provided. So I think there were sections that were left blank or hadn't been
Yeah, so
filled
even
out.
if you think it has nothing to do with you, NA,
oh, I just have to write it
It's
down.
gotta- if that's what it is.
Yeah.
Did
Hold
you-
on.
Did you look at the
So
application?
when you go
I did.
through the
Hold
rest
on.
of it, just go back through your application and then, fill it completely. Because if it's not answered at all, we don't know if you missed it. We don't know.
Okay, get it, okay.
Give me,
Makes sense.
if you give me one
Yeah, there was-
second.
I probably have it here, actually.
There were some blank pages.
So if I go into your file, give me 1 second.
I got a question. What was the 212 watt reformers? What'd you call them?
Yeah,
What is it? What's a reformer? I'm just curious.
so it looks like a bed post, it has like a leather part and like 2 pieces here and one for your head.
Oh,
And it moves back and forth.
okay.
You know what it's called, remember told Jim,
Oh, yeah,
it's an advanced toll.
okay.
It works on
It kind of
pulleys.
slides with pulleys. Okay,
Pulleys
yeah,
and
yeah.
Slides and
springs.
it works with resistance.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So your own weight is basically what you're.
That and springs, yeah.
Yeah.
Resistance.
Inclined to that
I
maybe.
guess that's changed now that she's gonna use
Okay, just
MJS.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's
But you can
actually
do, like,
using them,
thousands
but
of different
Well,
Yeah.
you've signed them out.
sizes on
yeah,
it,
Yeah,
and,
and this.
sometimes
it's
it's
everywhere.
Yeah, my fiance
Yeah.
talks, I know she goes, I don't know what it is, but I know she goes. Well,
Yes, so basically, on the application, it called for, identifying, the consultants. And I guess you had just written NA at the top of it, but now you have an engineer that's prepared the plan.
Uh-huh,
So fill in just the engineer's information.
okay.
There's a checklist also that goes through basically the items that are supposed to be on the site plan. So whatever ones are on there, just have them check off
Okay,
as what's included. If it's not applicable, just write NA on each individual checklist line.
okay.
And Liz, did you have something else?
no, I'm just going through the application, making sure he got everything.
Yeah, so, and if you have trouble with any of that, talk to your engineer. If you need anything from him to fill, to.
The LLC docs, I'm actually fine, the LLC docs are fine. Because that appears to be all set. So largely, and this is fine, because I've already noted it for the record, page 8 of 18, is the project within 500 feet. You're within 500 feet of 17M, which is and Mill Pond, which is what triggers the 239. So that's a yes, but we already know that, so I'm not gonna waste time on that one. The biggest one is just going through the checklist, and Brad should just be able to check that and sign it, and he can scan and email it into Terry. That's not a big deal. So I think now that we're here, we're significantly further than when we were before this submission. So I think the next steps is Terry can send this in if she's got it by email. I'm comfortable doing that.
I think we could set the public meeting at the next,
We can set the public hearing for the June meeting.
When is that?
That is going to be,
fourth Tuesday in June.
that's gonna be the
When
24th.
this month?
24th.
You have one
We-
this month?
We can't do it this month, just because of how the timing works. When we send it 239,
We need 30 days.
we need 30 days. So that's the county, it's a long process, but it's not on us, it's a process we have to go through.
Okay.
Type 2.
Yeah, it's a type 2.
I'm totally unfamiliar.
Yeah, no worries. So the county has it for 30 days. If they answer, sometimes on something this small, they won't even answer. So the 30 days runs out, then we can carry on.
Schedule the hearing.
Okay.
What?
So,
Yeah, we'll schedule the hearing for,
I think is that it?
yeah.
Okay, no, I think we're good, Mimi.
good?
Yes.
So we probably don't need her this month at the
No.
the meeting on the 26th.
No.
28th, I think.
Right, so we can take care of the things that we have to take care
We
of for the applicant.
we don't need you
You don't have
because
to come.
we won't be able to do anything else other than purely, all we're gonna do is set the public hearing. Once we set the public hearing, Terry will coordinate with you. There is some public notice. I'll prepare the notice and she'll give you the listed names, okay?
Okay.
That, for
So-
mailing.
So the only thing I need to do is complete the engineering questions out
Mhm.
there, right?
Yep,
Yeah, and anything that says, that doesn't apply, make sure there's an NA in there.
okay.
okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, you too. Thanks, Mimi. Good luck.
Have a great night.
You too. All
So
right,
Terry can send that out this week. Let's not wait
That's
any
something.
longer, okay?
all right. 208. I see John has arrived. How are you? I think what we'll probably do here is we'll start with Natalie's comments, John.
Sure.
And yeah, feel free to speak right up to that microphone. If you need to raise it a little, feel free. This way it records clearly for us.
All right, so the board has a copy of our memo dated May 9th, 2025. It's 8 pages. As I was talking to Liz and Jeff this morning, the 8 pages are really condensed. If you look at all of the italicized text, that's all recommendations for the eventual finding statement. So really the comments of note, I think are boiled down to maybe 5 or 6, so I'll go over those with you. The first, and in discussions, again, the applicant submitted a revised FEIS. I think every time that they submit, they get a little closer to addressing our comments. There are some threshold issues, that we'll talk about tonight. One of the issues that we talked about at the last meeting had to do with the 1-to-1 ratio of plantings that were required. There was an issue of 10 that couldn't fit on the site and how the applicant was going to proceed with those 10. At this point, they've received, approval from the village board, I think, to have a payment in lieu of those 10 plantings. So we've recommended language in your finding statement about that, but also the board should consider, what that payment should be based off of, what size maturity tree, what type of tree potentially. That way that payment will be appropriate. Obviously, a sapling is much less expensive than, a mature tree. So that's something for the board to consider. The second and probably the most important thing has to do with the off-site traffic improvements. The FEIS continues to indicate that they propose to complete those improvements prior to certificate of occupancy. Additionally, they propose to start construction of the 208 site simultaneous to the off-site improvements. So I think, it's been the board's position that that should be done. All of the off-site improvements, traffic-related, should be completed prior to building permit, with the exception of, some maybe more detailed issues, like we talked about the top coat of pavement could be deferred to a later time, and sidewalks potentially, and ultimately we'll defer to Kimley Horn on those recommendations. But substantially, the text should be revised to indicate prior to building permit, versus certificate of occupancy. The third thing that I wanted to go over with the board has to do with compliance with the stormwater management requirements and the general permit. The on and off-site improvements exceed 5 acres disturbance. There's some inconsistencies between the plan, the phasing plan that they provided, and the text of the FEIS. Again, if they're proposing to conduct the off-site and on-site improvements, it would exceed the 5 acre threshold. So they would need to submit, a request to disturb greater than 5 acres if that's their intent. Otherwise, they should include some more details about how they will limit the construction to 5 acres. The next issue has to do with available.
Natalie,
Sure.
before you go forward.
Yeah.
being there's 5 acres of parking, et cetera, a lot of cars, is there an oil and water separator associated with the,
At this time,
Stormwater
that's not
drainage.
included, that isn't included with the applicant's plans at this moment. We'll get into the details of the stormwater design like that, once the seeker is concluded. But yeah, so for the 5 acres, it's actually, I think, 4.8 or 4.9 acres on the site. What puts them over the 5 acres is the off-site improvements with the traffic. So, all right.
so do you think during construction, during the permit, are we gonna be looking for that?
Yeah, well, when we go into the details of the site plan, we'll broach that with the applicant.
You
Okay, I know
okay-
that's something
you
that
okay
you've
with
raised
that?
before.
Well, it's an engineering issue, so I'll defer to Kirk.
Understood.
about it,
Yep.
And Kirk will work with Natalie on that issue.
Sure. Okay.
He's not here
He's not
tonight.
here.
Kirk's not here?
Yeah.
No,
Okay,
he couldn't make it.
all right, so that's an open question for you,
Sure.
knowing that that's gonna happen.
Okay. The next issue is the ability of the village to support the project with the water supply availability. So we had a meeting with the mayor and the water plant operator this afternoon. You know, I think at this point, everybody's satisfied with the applicant's calculations and the projections for what the proposed use is going to need. In reviewing the list of approved but unbuilt projects that the applicant provided as part of the DEIS in Appendix I, it seems that there may be some missing projections, such as the Smith Farm subdivision that may not be completely built out, and the queue. So we're gonna work with what I talked to the mayor about is circulating that list, to the planning board, to Liz, potentially Lincoln Tully, and, the water department, to try to make that list a little bit more comprehensive, so we can really see, again, we know what the village is supplying now, what the capabilities are. We know what the applicant's asking for, so the question is, what else is not realized? So we'll get that list refined. Also.
So Natalie, would the water
Sure.
department not keep track of that? Is there somebody supposed to keep a track of that list from the different projects? Because they all have to go to the water department.
Yeah, in my experience, it's a little bit of like interdepartment cooperation, if you will. The planning board approves certain projects, the building department approves certain projects. There's 2 different entities. Everything that you approve goes through the building department. Sometimes the engineering firm might keep a good list, but I think, I've seen more the water department, and I don't know exactly how the village operates, is probably not looking at the overall capacity usually. I think that, when I work with municipalities, I try to do that at this level.
They're just saying we got water today.
Yeah, and kind of addressing what they need to at the moment, and again, I don't know exactly how everybody's working together here, but I know there's been some administration changes and things like that too, so. And then the only other thing related to that issue is, from the mayor and Will's perspective, they'd like to see some language in the resolution that would indicate, maybe a penalty if the applicant went over what they were projecting, and you've reviewed and approved essentially, as well as, some language that would allow them to enforce what you approved as part of the site plan. So we'll work with Liz on that.
Just, the queue may be expired.
What's that?
The queue their
Oh,
approval may
okay.
have lapsed.
Well, that would, make that easy.
Because
So,
I'm looking at this and
What'd you say about the queue? Oh,
their approval may have lapsed. I have to verify,
the
but
permits certainly have.
they had 1 year to commence construction, and I don't know
Yeah,
that they did that.
No, they didn't.
And they have not been back before us to renew. So that analysis may not need to be done.
all right. Well, yeah, so we'll circulate the list, and if there's anything that we're missing or the applicant's missing, we'll just try to put our heads together and get that updated. One of the last 2 things that I wanted to talk to the board about has to do with the discussion on the reduced scale alternative that was presented by the applicant in their FEIS. Some of their statements indicate that it's, not in line with their objectives due to handicap accessibility issues related to access to the second floor. And also that retail uses on the second floor would generate less income, than it being located on a first story. So we've asked for some additional discussion supporting those statements, and kind of question whether or not that, really removes it from the planning board's consideration.
And we haven't received anything yet.
Not yet, no, I think, and I don't know if John wants to talk about
Yeah,
that.
on that issue, so the reduced scale alternative was an alternative that was provided in the scope and asked for by the board and its consultants. And basically, it's a smaller building footprint. So, 1,100, about 1,100 square feet, the building would be reduced, and then that square footage would be put on the second floor.
Mm-hmm.
That retail, the first floor was mostly taken up by the
Potential grocery
shopping
store.
center or grocery store. And so the grocery store, the other retail space would have to be put on the second floor for this alternative. And it's the applicant's opinion that putting retail at 1,100 square feet on the second floor is just impractical. It's done, but it isn't ideal for foot traffic and shopping carts and that sort of thing. So that's why we made the argument in the DEIS and the FEIS that from a practicality standpoint, it's better for the business and business model and objectives to put all the retail on the first floor and the office on the second floor.
Mr. Chair, I did have a conversation with counsel to the applicant, Charles Gottlieb, this afternoon, and we discussed some language revisions that could support the theory that the reduced scale alternative isn't necessarily appropriate from a business perspective. It's just this board needs to be able to make a finding that they've taken a hard look at different alternatives, the reduced scale being one of them, and that's a required seeker. Right now, the language is a little, well, it's harder for ADA. Well, you've got second floor offices, so you've got to comply with ADA anyway. I think Mr. Gottlieb and I have talked about some of marketing discussions as to why the project doesn't become practicable, which is fine. We just need that discussion included in the FEIS.
Right.
So I did communicate with Charlie about that. So I think there is some language there that can support a finding that the reduced scale alternative may not be appropriate in comparison to the preferred alternative, which is what's before you. We just need the language in there so that you can take a look at that language and
Right.
take your hard look. So
Right.
this applicant merely saying, hey, I don't want it, we need a little bit more meat there. So
Right.
I did talk to Charlie about what kind of meat he could offer up, and I think we came to a consensus there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give more background on
Mhm.
the issue.
Yeah, because ultimately, if the board is looking at it from like a benefit and drawback standpoint, when you look at the reduced scale alternative, you might say, oh, well, that is a little bit more beneficial because effectively a reduced building footprint could draw back the development from the property lines, potentially create some impervious areas,
Mhm.
but, if it's not feasible and there's justification for that, then that's kind of what you want to find in your text so that you
Right.
can justify your decision.
Right, and we won't know that till he
Right.
gives us something, so.
And there is a marketing discussion. We went over the marketing discussion, second floor,
Sure.
do second floor rents and marketability justify the project.
Okay.
That's it,
Mhm.
but we need that information.
Right.
So then, go ahead, sorry.
I'm good.
Okay, yeah. The only other thing that I wanted to kind of close the loop on is at the last meeting, we talked about how the applicant eliminated the retaining walls along the border of the YMCA in this property. And now the plans indicate that they're gonna perform a steep rock cut there, and that would essentially serve as the elevation change or, the barrier between the two properties. And we had concerns at the last meeting that, well, what if it wasn't rock and they went to go perform that excavation and now you have exposed soils and maybe undermining of the adjacent property. So the applicant's response, provides some pictures of what the existing bedrock geology is in the area, and shows how that would look. So really, from a planning board perspective, I think you can kind of approach this now in two ways. The first is include conditions of your action that, you know, would require the applicant to return to you if, you know, during construction that wasn't the case, that it wasn't a steep bedrock, or, you know, that they
Right,
weren't
if the
able to
rock
cut
wasn't
that
there
bedrock
when they
out.
dig
Yeah.
in.
Right, because essentially that would then require the retaining walls, which would not be code compliant due to the requirements for setbacks. Or you can ask the applicant to conduct a boring to prove that the bedrock is there at this time. I think from our perspective, we're comfortable with either way. You know, I think it's just up to the planning board on what your level of comfort is in that scenario, so.
Yes, that would be a discussion for all of us, so whether they're, you know, we ask them for the boring, the holes, you know, see if the rock is actually there, as opposed to putting the retaining walls up to do a steep cut in. But if the rock's not there, they can't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think,
Then they'd have to come back to us. So really, it comes down to, do we ask them ahead of time to do it, to do the bores, you know, the holes, and see if it is there, or trigger if they're digging and it doesn't pan out on what they were thinking was there, and the rock is not there.
but
then-
safer, boring would be safer, wouldn't it?
Well, I think that, either way, I think you're,
I think
as
the
long as
risk
you
is
have,
theirs.
yeah, it is, and as long as you have it in your resolution that they would need to come back if that wasn't the case, you know, if the plan couldn't be effectuated the way they're presenting it, you know, they would have to come back to you, you know,
So
at a
really, they
later
can
date.
spend the money on
Now or
boring, or
later,
they can spend the
yeah.
money doing it, and then take the chance of getting stopped and redoing it.
Right,
Well,
To
we
put the
would know
retaining-
better with the bore, right?
We would know sooner, so would they.
yeah.
I think that makes more sense, I think.
Yeah, it saves time, money.
You know, aren't they under time constraints because they have to work around the spire and stuff? So in order, you know, if they're going and they're starting to dig without knowing what's there, they're gonna have to stop. Interferes with their time frame that they're gonna tell Inspire that they're gonna be working because there's, you know,
Well, it would delay them
special
depending
needs
on when
kids
that.
there.
Oh, you're talking about the construction schedule for,
Yeah.
I can't speak for construction.
Well, and the planning board schedule, they'd have to come back here, so,
It would be processed as a field, either a site plan amendment or a field change.
right.
So I'll offer a third alternative.
Sure.
We could do a little more investigation. I know Kirk has done some test bits and no borings, but test bits out there, and we may have a little more information on, in that area.
Okay.
I can check with Kirk on that.
Yeah, and then have them send it over, right, and Natalie can take a look.
Just to see if there's
Yeah,
enough information to make that call.
okay,
Maybe not, but possibly.
yeah, great.
There is a rock out there. I mean, it's exposed. If you go out there, at the back of the YMCA is just a rock cut,
Mhm.
and we.
Right, it's just where does it end?
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that had to be blasted for the Y. They had to do a lot of blasting for that.
Okay. So I think that that's the way moving forward then. You'll provide some additional information, we'll take a look at it. If it doesn't pan out that way, it sounds like the board's leaning more to more information or a field investigation versus relying on a site plan condition, or?
I mean, it makes more sense to us. I mean, you know, I think it would, you know, probably financially, certainly time frame.
Okay,
You know, because if they have a construction schedule, which I'm sure they do, it would be, you know, it would throw that, for sure.
okay.
So-
Okay.
So then, that's all I have, and I know that, you know, you guys would potentially be listed for the next meeting in 2 weeks, but do you want to proceed with us working with the applicant if they have questions on our comments?
Yeah, I think that'd be
Do you think I need
great.
to come back in 2 weeks, or?
I don't think
No.
there's a necessary,
No, I don't think it's
Okay.
necessary either.
and
Okay.
speaking with Mr. Gottlieb, my understanding is, he and I both agree we're getting close.
Yeah,
If we can get over the traffic issue.
Yeah, so, and that's what we want to put again on the record, John, just so you know. Not for you, but for
And we
everybody.
do have both traffic consultants in the
Yes,
room, so,
Exactly.
yeah, John
So is
snuck
that-
in.
Yeah, and, you know, because our position from the beginning is no construction occurs until all the traffic patterns are cleared up, right? Now, we did say, you know, we've been bantering back and forth the idea that maybe if there's concern about the top coat and construction, because I know that was kind of raised, there's some wiggle room there to not put that top coat on. the pavement,
Right.
right? So, so the construction can still go, but it would, so that's where we still stand. And the only ones that could change that would be the village board.
Now, is there any consideration for some middle level of off-site traffic improvement construction?
While the other,
While the other construction starts?
I would say no, but if the village board agrees with you, they can say,
How would the middle ground work?
So, Ken, our traffic consultant, proposed a schedule and some interim level of traffic improvements that could coincide, and basically the two projects would be built.
simultaneously.
Not at the same time, but in sequence, yes, some kind of simultaneous construction. So I'd like Ken to
Sure.
maybe speak to that issue.
Why do you guys want that?
I think from the applicant's perspective, it would be a burden to wait 5-7 years until all the traffic off-site improvements are done, lights are in place, everything's ready to go, and then start construction. It just seems like, quite a delay in the project when it could be done simultaneously. It could be
I mean,
worked
can they put the money up first for all that construction that's gonna be off-site?
on.
Because I think that would be a conversation piece then, if the money's there, because the problem is, the village is not gonna pay for it.
Right,
So the money would, to even start the project, we'd have to have a guarantee that the money is there to do the off-site
right.
stuff.
Well, bonding, I haven't
Yeah.
had this conversation with the applicant, but that's a possibility, for,
I think the biggest concern with all of this, just from a order of operations, is we are left with, we don't have the traffic flow established.
Mhm.
Your building is nearly complete. You can't get a CO, so it's sitting empty.
right.
You can't finish the traffic improvements. And now we've got not only a gross ugly site that we can't give a CO to, we've got a gross ugly traffic circle. So I'm calling it a circle, I know it's not a circle. I think that's the biggest concern is, let's get the traffic in place so that the traffic can support the building, and then we can give a CO.
Yeah, and I think, we've been kind of looking at it where, you have an issue, you start, say, the off-site traffic improvements, and now you're introducing more traffic due to construction with construction vehicles and things like that. So say, you're worsening the issue for the site itself, and then like Liz says, if it doesn't ever come to fruition, you have a building
You have a mess.
and not the improvements, yeah, so.
Well, I agree. The on-site improvements are a big commitment, and,
Sure.
and, once they get going, they have to be completed. I'll let Ken speak to
Sure.
this. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Good evening, Ken Worsted from Craig Manning Engineering, traffic consultant for the project. 5 to 6 years might be a little long in terms of
Okay.
construction, unless, there's, 5 guys doing the whole job by themselves. With wheelbarrows and shovels. We had provided a anticipated or projected schedule in this, last submission. We think, there's probably gonna be about a year of design and approvals to get through, with DOT. Obviously, we worked for years with them to get a concept ready, and now it's to the point where we have to go out there, do survey, cross the i's and dot the t's and get all the details of that. So we think that's gonna take, probably a year. If we have those, and we were to progress both the building and the traffic improvements, we would anticipate that the traffic improvements would be done in a shorter time period than the actual building. The building might take 14 months to complete. The traffic improvements might take 9 or 10 months. So if we were to progress them simultaneously, we would expect all the traffic improvements to be done before that. With the concern of the construction traffic coming in and out of the site and trouble accommodating traffic that's there now, we had provided back a proposal to improve the Gilbert Street extension /208/Scunnamunk intersection into a temporary signalized intersection, or permanent, depending on how the design flows, through there, to at least signalize that intersection and allow, obviously, the YMCA to get in and out, the contractors, the workers who are working on the building, to get in and out. And then with truck traffic trying to direct them to and from the north from 17 and using flaggers, if there was a truck trying to pull out of there, flaggers would step out, control traffic for 30 seconds, a minute to let that truck get out. So we felt like that was kind of a compromise of improving traffic to accommodate the incremental amount of traffic generated during construction, but working towards the full build out of the traffic improvements. And I think, to John's point of the client looking at building out all those improvements first, and then saying, okay, we're done, or we're 95% DOT has accepted these improvements, and then we come back to the board, and now we get approval to start the building. They have all that investment up front, and I agree with the board that the concern, even for the applicant, is to rush and get the building done, and then have it sit there and wait for the traffic improvements. It's a shell of a building, it's like, it's done, it's ready to go, but they can't go in because the traffic improvements aren't complete. So that's definitely a concern of them. And I think overall, they have to figure out, A, where all that money's coming from. Can they put up a bond to, cover those, those improvements? And how to time all of that, together. So I don't think they have any expectation that the planning board or the town would help fund those improvements, but we have talked for years now about having the village be involved in that process, that if there is grants to be, received from the state, it is a state, intersection, that the town would be part of that. They would help sponsor that. And if there was a grant that pays 80% of this and 20% is the responsibility of the village, well, the developer would provide that amount, to cover it. But it would likely be a village-sponsored project, and they would have to administer it, and then, contractors would go out and prepare it.
And to your knowledge, have you guys been in touch with the village, talking to them about that?
There have been some conversations, preliminary conversations.
Okay.
And again, that would be largely the subject of a developer's agreement,
Right.
as a condition of approval. So there have been some discussions of that.
And then the other aspect is, if you have applicants coming before the board that are contributing to that intersection in terms of the traffic, they also help chip in, and provide some contribution, to the improvements there. So we heard on the record several times that you guys want all the improvements done before a building permit. Our counter is to come back and say, how about this interim amount of improvement at the intersection to address the contractor construction-related, traffic improvements or impacts. But then still, a CO can't be given until the rest of the improvements are done.
So Ken, do you have any idea where they're gonna access, the construction vehicles? Like where that's, is it one place or more than one place?
It would likely be two, so if you come down Gilbert, and before you get to the YMCA, off to the right, obviously that's the same. So if you go in there, clear land, make like a, contractor's parking lot.
Right.
So where the parking lot is supposed to be, make that the construction kind of parking lot. And then larger trucks coming in, come down 208, and where, so I think it's
Before the gas station?
after the,
Yeah.
well, as the gap, as the Sicko, I think it is.
Yeah,
on the
past
right-hand
Illinois.
side, past that one, but before the mobile,
Right.
on the right-hand side,
Uh-huh.
as you're coming
Yeah.
into the village.
So in between there and like,
Or Joe fixes it.
Right.
Joe Fix It's,
Yeah.
in between that, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially where,
You're just
The
gonna
firm-
clear
Right
the
after-
path,
right
you're just
after
gonna
Illinois.
do a trail through there, right? You're just
Park.
gonna-
Well, that's where they would enter, where would they leave?
they would make a U-turn, they would go onto the project site, do whatever deliveries
And
they
then
need.
turn
And
around and go
exit.
out the same way.
You could come out, so
That's the whole way there now.
You have to go
Well,
right.
No, the only thing, like,
You'd have to go up
You know where the little
No, no, no,
U-turn
no,
is?
no, no, so about creating a road in between the two gas stations,
Right,
right? Creating that
okay,
access.
all right. But when
And
you
then
come
they
out-
turn around and come back out.
Okay, and when you come back to where you went.
The
you're-
slipway, you
that's
have to
a
go one
one-way.
way.
Where Joe's Fix-It is, that's a one-way.
You have to, you
Yeah,
have to
they
go right.
have to go right.
They,
And then-
A, you go right, or you use the crossover with flaggers.
I was gonna say, the only way, you'd have to have something there because you have a lot combined right
Yeah,
there.
that turn is tough there, coming
no, then
out
you
of
get,
that way, they won't be able to turn.
Not with the truck.
Well, that's why you would have flaggers out there to hold the traffic, and then
You
they've
can't
got
even turn
that
there.
full U-turn to make the turn.
The traffic's already backed up there.
Right.
I mean, it's,
That's what the flaggers would do, and hold it, you know.
and hold it even more, it's,
Well, you know, it's 30 seconds to a minute to, you know, get the truck out, and then they walk away, and, you know, that's it.
Yeah, but
Try not to
you
do
don't
that.
understand what 30 seconds to a minute can add to the traffic around here, because if someone's on their phone trying to go through that light, and they sit there for 5 seconds on their phone, you don't get through that light, because it's on a timer, and if you don't trip that, you don't hit the magnet in there in a certain time, then that light's done, and then you gotta wait the whole cycle again. So, you're talking 30 seconds to a minute on that, how are you gonna control that traffic? I mean, it's going to be,
17.
it's gonna be more of a nightmare now than it is.
it's gonna be to like, way back there, yeah.
Park,
I
the
mean,
park.
To the park, I mean, past the park, it's gonna be, yeah, I mean, I can't.
And that's just gonna have to be,
Regular.
that's gonna be the way it is when they build those improvements. So.
Well, I think there should be a better design to come in and out of that than just say that's the way it is. I think that's not a good answer, honestly, that's not a good answer.
It's a fair answer, I think, because, I mean, imagine.
But
when
we
they're building-
live in this village, and I understand you wanna put something there, but now you're asking all of us to be inconvenienced how much and how often? For how long does this plan on taking? Like the road improvements or the actual build? Is it a year, 2 years?
The road improvements are probably 8 to 10 months.
Okay, and then
And a lot of that,
construction 2 years?
no, sorry, with that 8 to 10 months, a lot of that is just waiting for materials. So when you order the signal poles, it could be 6 months waiting for those poles to be manufactured.
I'm talking actual disturbance.
So for the road improvements, it's probably, you know, 2 to 3 months of very disturbance. So the road construction will be obviously I gotta build the road.
Correct, yeah, I
Right.
mean, that
Yeah.
is what it
Yes.
is, yeah, we're gonna have to work. But what I'm talking about is the traffic in and out, like Barbara was saying. You have a one-way slip there. When you come out of there, and then, I don't know if you plan on making that hard left to go
Back
back up towards the fire department there with trucks. A car can't even make that U-turn like that, you know what I mean? So I think you're gonna have to go into the village and go by Five Guys and stuff like that and go out that way.
Talking about in and out of
In
Gilbert.
and out, yeah, with your trucks, because there's no other,
You're saying on the slip ramp there, come Gilbert and up, and then back out Gilbert.
Just go towards 17, I'm saying. When
Go
you
towards
do it,
17,
you gotta just
yeah.
go
you
17.
have to go towards.
Or coming out of that and going
Major.
towards 17. But even
Unless
there,
we
The
make
traffic
the
improvements,
slipway
this is
a
the
two-way
traffic
at
signal,
that
so
point,
by
unless
the
they
time
can
the
improve
traffic
that and
signal
make that a
came
two-way,
in,
and then they can just
they
come
would
out and go
basically
left.
have the whole structure completed.
On the slipway, you know what I mean, the one way.
Foundations and the
Yeah.
clearing and
You know what I mean?
grading,
I think
then
that would might be
starting.
better to improve that first,
This
get
needs
that
to show me
going,
the, like,
and
here.
then, you know what I mean? So you don't have all that traffic going into the village. You're sending it right into the village all the time. You have to, those trucks, construction trucks, have to make the right and go out that way. You know what I mean?
no, I know what you mean.
Don't forget, we do have John here, so if you want to solicit his.
John, would you like to say anything to this?
He's got his red pen and his highlighter.
Thank you, Ken, appreciate it. And feel free to jump back up if you need to.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, John Canning with Kimley Horn. I have been overseeing the traffic review of the DEIS and FEIS process. So I don't have to tell you this is a complicated project, and the improvements that are associated with this project, frankly, are significant compared to some other projects. It's by virtue of the location. If they had found an easier location, they wouldn't be doing as much, but they're doing a lot. The request, in my opinion, and you're the board that makes the decision, I understand it, because it takes a long time to get your off-site improvements approved by the DOT, probably a year. Then it's gonna take you another 6 months to build them, so that's 18 months. And then if you can't start building your own building till then, that's another 18 months on top of that. So that's their request, that they somehow combine them, right? Your goal, as I see it, is to make sure that the improvements are built, the traffic improvements are built before this project comes online. And also to make sure that the applicant doesn't go bankrupt building them, so that you end up with some sort of an eyesore and a half-finished traffic improvements. So really, as is often the case in these projects, the construction is almost harder than the environmental impacts of the proposed development, because there's a lot going on, especially from the traffic perspective. What the applicant has proposed is kind of like a construction management plan, which I've often seen in other municipalities is a condition of approval prior to the issuance of a building certificate or building permit. The applicant has to complete construction management plan, which is reviewed by the building department, police and fire, and they make sure that the various measures that are proposed in the construction management plan will be sufficient to accommodate construction traffic. It doesn't really address the fact whether they build the buildings or not, but I'll come back to that in a moment. They've started the process. They basically said that they would like to modify the intersection of 208 and Gilbert and put a signal in there at a temporary permit. They said they'd like to make some operational flag person adjustments up at the north end. I mean, I think the key, there's a couple of key elements. Based on my experience of projects of this nature, there will be considerable construction activity. Not huge, but 20, 30 trips an hour. And there will be reasonably considerable truck activity, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 trucks an hour. That's much less than the full build-out traffic that's proposed for the project, which is in the hundreds. So it would be good, it would be great to have all of the traffic improvements done to accommodate the construction traffic activity, but frankly, I don't think it's necessary to offset the temporary impact. What you want to make sure in your construction management plan is that measures that they propose, such as if they do propose flaggers at the north end so that they could get trucks in and then back out, because you really don't want trucks going through the village. Getting them in is easy enough, they just come down 208, make a right, and getting them back out is the challenge. So what they proposed, where the roads start to come together there, is to get permission from DOT, because it's a DOT road, pave between the two of them, and then when you're taking a truck out, you could go across the southbound traffic, wait in the middle area with flaggers, and then go north from the middle part. This would be all part of a construction management plan. And either this board could review it as part of their secret process, or you could kick it on down the road to the building department. The second part really would be, in my mind, tying construction of the off-site traffic improvements to hard milestones in the construction of the project, so that one doesn't get ahead of the other. You don't want the building to get built to 95% and they're begging for a permit. They're still halfway done with the traffic improvements. And at the same time, they don't want to have the traffic improvements 95% built and still be a year away with construction. So part of the construction management plan, and they have a schedule in here, but I haven't looked at it in detail, would be to have hard milestones to say, okay, if you have, we agree that these temporary improvements are good for until you get the foundation, site prep and foundation in, and then you need to have design and permit approval before you get your building, you get permission to put the structure up. And I don't know what all the milestones are, but I think if you had hard milestones and then some measure to either bond or build the remaining improvements when you're 6 to 8 months away from completion, then you might have a plan that's at least guaranteed to get you a good way down the road. Every plan has to change, but I think it would get you a good way down the road that you'd get to where you want to be, which I think after all of the time you put in on this application, you'd like to see a nice development there with the traffic improvements. The applicant will be happy. So I don't know if that's helpful to you.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. I think, I think probably what we'll need is maybe even a joint board, having the village guys and so forth when it gets to that point, and have these ideas presented.
So it seems to me, Mr. Canning, that you are okay with simultaneous development of traffic remediation and the site, so long as we can find some kind of plan that lays it out in very concrete steps.
Yes.
We don't have that yet, I don't think.
No.
We do not have that yet. It's the norm, usually the norm, that off-site improvements and construction on-site go hand in hand. They're never fully simultaneous, but they move along at the same time. Because ultimately, the applicant wants to open up as soon as he's finished the building, and the
Right.
municipality wants the off-site improvements finished before the building opens. So you'd like to get them both to the finish line at the same time.
So John, would you, in looking at you doing traffic studies, would you be able to determine, what's needed for, or obviously Creighton Manning, what's needed for the least obstruction of traffic? What would have to be done first in the building of the off-site traffic patterns? To say, hey, this will be the first mile marker here, the hard, milestone.
Yep. So typically, the applicant, once they get to a point where they feel, okay, we're ready to commit our next tranche of money to get this done, would commit to a logistics plan that would identify the various phases of construction, where the site would be fenced off, where the laydown areas and access points would be, and then at that point, Great Manning would step up and say, okay, so we want to get trucks on and off from 17 at 208 because that's the least impactful to everybody. And they would come up with a work zone traffic control plan with signage and flaggers and cones that would do that. The intent always is to maintain all traffic patterns that are there now. You don't want to take somebody and divert them around on some other street. And where you have street closures, they would be very short, on the order of 30, 60 seconds, and they would occur outside the peak hours where they're going to be most disruptive. But these are all the elements of the plan. And then the construction of the improvements themselves is another big headache because you're going to have to maintain traffic while you build them. Typically, what you do is you try and if you're putting something on one side, you build that out, put people over onto that while you build the other side. Then that will be worked out with DOT as part of the permitting process, and it takes a long time. But the bottom line is, presuming that this project proceeds, you need a well-established construction management plan that this board and the village has had a chance to review and feel comfortable that it will get you to where you want to be.
Jeff, do we have anything in our village code that if you can't do construction at night, can they do a night program for something like this? Because it's not a residential area right there. It's not like homes are in the area that we're gonna be, well, maybe there is. Yeah, no, there are, yeah, no, there are corners there.
Yeah.
But is there, because honestly, it's such a unique area that's there, that's, like you said, already failing, and if you try to...
I think you'd be increasing their construction costs, because you're paying people, if they're gonna work through the night, you're doing time and a half.
I'm talking about the road improvement, stuff like that,
I'm
like
saying
that, if there's, anything that they can do to help that, because it's just...
No, I know what you're saying, I think everything's worth discussing.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't have an answer to that, but, and I'm not sure, maybe these guys do, but I know that anytime we see workers at night, they're getting paid a whole lot more than the workers during the day.
Well, that's not our problem, really.
It's not.
That's not our
It's
problem.
not,
But our problem is the traffic, and the traffic it's
I
gonna
agree.
create, and then obviously it's gonna alleviate all the traffic because of all the improvements, but we
We
gotta
do,
go.
we do have codes that prevent working after a particular time at night,
Yes.
both by noise and lighting. So I know that. The zones come together there. You got North Main, there's residents
Sure,
right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
There's a number of things.
So over by the Joe Fixit side is all commercial, over, towards the light up there, it's more residential, I get that,
Yeah.
But I don't think that that construction's not gonna be up by that
I-
light up over
No,
there.
and don't forget, that sits up on a hill too, so if you got lights and stuff going at nighttime, you're catching everything across 17.
I think what I would suggest for purposes, because we're
Yeah.
talking about something in the abstract, and I think what I would suggest is, authorize Mr. Canning and Mr. Worsted to talk and create, obviously, there's a timing issue, and do we get the site, we're fairly close to getting the site set, the site
Right.
plan set. And then go into this construction management plan. I would suggest, without any disrespect to the building department, this is probably best suited for engineers to review than our building department.
Yeah.
And so I would include it in the language that it would be conditioned on approval by our engineers. And again, all of this is gonna go into a developer's agreement as well.
Yeah,
Because they're gonna get a conditional approval, there will be a developer's agreement.
yeah, and I agree.
And then that can be hashed out at that particular time,
Yeah,
where the appropriate hard milestones are, and then we can come up with a concrete agreement that at clearing, this has to be done for traffic improvements. And then, of course, I'll have to work with them for bonding. I'm assuming New York State DOT isn't gonna touch this until after we grant conditional site.
Well, the New York State DOT, in all fairness, has been reviewing.
No, has been reviewing it, but they're not going to start
They're not
going
going to
down their
start-
permitting process
no, they're not.
until,
They have a three-stage permit process. They've effectively completed phase one, which is concept,
okay,
right? So they generally agree with the concept. Now you get into the details. Is the lane 11.5 feet wide or 12 feet wide? How thick is the shoulder? Where's the drainage? That sort of stuff.
yeah.
so there may be a need to come back to us to revisit the site plan once we get through DOT.
Look, never say never.
Right.
The hope and the expectation is that you won't have to.
Okay.
But you can't guarantee it.
Okay,
So I think that's a good idea. I think, John, if you work with Ken, and talk about that, because I'd love to get, as few meetings as possible, but to bring, the village board to something of a presentation
Well,
when that,
so I think for the immediate future, we've given the applicant some homework in terms of revisions to the FEIS to finalize that language. I think the language with respect to the construction management, can be
yeah,
a little
I mean,
bit.
the other stuff has to be done.
One,
I get that.
and my understanding is that Mr. Gottlieb has largely drafted a draft finding statement. And then we can incorporate that again as part of the developer's agreement, all that kind of stuff. But I think for moving the project forward right this moment is just, and Natalie, chime in if I'm speaking out of school here.
That area especially, coming from 208, Worley Heights, and Washingtonville,
Yeah.
coming from that area. There's a lot of traffic in the morning,
Yep.
a lot of traffic in the afternoon.
Yep.
I've talked to people, take 1 hour to get through there. All of a sudden, we're talking about joint construction, meaning the traffic pattern and the project itself.
Yep.
I'm going back in my notes months. I'll take the one closest to tonight, was February 25th. New traffic patterns need to be in place before they start construction. We always talked about that. Now, all of a sudden, the project representatives come in and they want to do something else.
So I recognize that that is a correct and true statement. This board has the decision to stick with that. The applicant is here tonight asking you for some relief.
John, just think about the traffic pattern with dual construction, especially with the large equipment that has to be brought in to put up steel for a building, okay?
Yep.
Forget the wall by the YMCA. If that doesn't happen, they got to come back here again. And we're going through months again.
So that's a decision that this board.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem that the project representatives have a plan.
So I would offer this as a sort of a middle ground, right? You're not making a decision tonight, it seems like.
Oh, no.
right? So that gives the applicant at least a month to pull together the better part of a good comprehensive plan, and the applicant can come back here next month and convince you that the plan is sufficient, or you can decide that it's not.
It's always worth talking about, Joe. I mean, the decision still sits here, but it's, you know, I'd like to hear what they would do and how they would do it and how that's gonna mitigate the problems. Right?
Traffic.
Right. So, you know, either way, they're not getting in without a CO. They're not,
I personally don't see how they can alleviate the traffic that's there now
that's why we wanna have that meeting.
with construction. And I would love to see your construction schedule.
Yeah.
So,
It's been submitted.
There is something in the FEIS about the construction schedule, and I know John said that he hasn't had a chance to consider it yet, and I think that, you know, what I looked at shows the traffic light being on back order essentially up until the building, or the site is cleared and the foundation is poured and the building is substantially constructed. So I'm sure that, you know, there's gonna be probably some changes in that timeline, but, you know, I think the discussion here was good, and I think we've heard a lot of feedback from, you know, all parties, and authorizing, you know, your traffic consultant to work with the applicant's engineer is gonna be helpful, and, you know, really figuring out what's best for the village and practical for the applicant.
Yeah,
my
I agree,
soapbox.
100%. So, I think that's the way to go.
Do we know if the applicant has put in for grant money from the state?
So typically,
Excuse me a minute. Has it put in yet? Yes or no?
no, because typically,
You're
Grant-
you're the applicant now.
I'm not, but I can answer the question on behalf of the village. Typically, most grants in this regard are public grants that the applicant needs to be the village. There have been some preliminary discussions with the village serving as essentially the mediator, in that they would be not the applicant nominee, if that's a good expression, but that we would not be providing the funding. There have been preliminary discussions, but has the village submitted a grant on their behalf? No.
Yeah, and I don't know what those discussions entail, but I assume that, you know, the prompt for a grant would be brought forward by the applicant, you know, doing their due diligence, looking for
absolutely.
opportunities, and then, you know, providing that, hey, village, you know, this is an opportunity for us, you know, we'll put in the
They-
legwork, you know, will you help us?
They essentially have to come to us with a prepared application
Yes.
and ask us to review it and consent to signing it.
What is your,
And I would add
what is
that-
your estimate for the improvement of the roads?
Just to finish this comment, I would add that it's hard to get a grant approved if you don't have a project approved. Right, so
Right.
I'm not gonna give you money for a project. that-
Right, it's a chicken or an egg thing,
Mhm.
you know.
Okay,
To your
your
comment,
concept.
I'm sorry, say it again.
It's your concept, okay? They're not gonna give you money, okay? But
Right.
I think, Joe,
what's
you're-
your estimate for the improvement of that road?
We have estimated it probably at $2.5 million. That was probably a year or 2 years ago. So we're estimating it could be up to $3.5 million now.
$2.5 million sounds awful low to me.
It would be.
the other thing too,
I thought it was gonna be more.
and again, this is more for the, you know, the applicant themselves, but, you know, we had a
Sounds like
situation
easy
with
money.
light here over on
I was
Gilbert,
expecting to say 7 or 8.
that was gonna be triggered from DOT by the COs that were given to the homes in that development as they were built. Then they would trigger, you know, the improvement. So there was a bond made, but by the time it's getting up to that period of time, the bond was about 1/3 of what was needed.
Yeah.
So that's something that needs to be addressed ahead of time.
Yes,
So, because we don't wanna see that happen,
right, where the bond's short.
right?
You know, and you could be earmarked money for an improvement, and every year that goes by, that money makes up
Goes
less and
somewhere,
less
right.
percent of your
Exactly,
project, and
yes,
further
yes.
and further away from it.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
point, yeah. Yeah, I think that's true, so. But yeah, I'm anxious to hear, you know, what the plan would be and see what happens there. So, but I know there's a lot that has to get done where
But I think we've had a good conversation
Yeah, I
today
think it's a
about-
great conversation. It's the first substantive conversation we've had about this since the beginning, so I think that was good. So,
Any questions from Team 208?
No. We have to do some homework, obviously, and we'll be in discussions with, Mr. Canning.
perfect.
You know, I've got just a general question. Do we know exactly why that traffic intersection, do we have main proximate cause for why it's such a nightmare? Is it the one-way street there?
I'll tell you why it's not.
It's $1 million
Well,
question.
apart from the fact that there's too many people,
There's a gas station.
the
the middle.
approach around coming on Scunnamunk is kind of blind, and it's kind of offset. And so the DOT's solution to that, right, was, well, we'd like people on opposing roads to go at the same time, because you can get two cars to go at once, but we don't feel comfortable with it, so we're gonna make these guys go, then these guys wait, then these guys go, then these guys wait, then these guys go, then these guys wait, and so everybody has a separate phase.
And you have no room for a left-hand turn lane
And even though
in
we're
any
for that
direction.
turn lane.
Yes.
So,
But it's really, most traffic signals, simple traffic signal, right, a four-way lane, that street goes both directions at a time,
Yeah.
this street goes both directions at a time. At this intersection, nobody goes at the same time, so it's
No.
like half the capacity right off the bat, and then you've got lots of people.
yeah.
Could
I know that.
could we fix part of that right now, with just a better light?
I think you could, but, you know, with the DOT, it's like trying to push rope. You know, you
Trying to push rope.
push rope through. You have to convince them that it was a good and a safe idea, and it's been there for so long.
Who's gonna pay for it? Come out of your village taxes? I don't think so.
No, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That was what that whole conversation was for, isn't it?
It's dead.
So.
Anyway, sorry.
No, thank you.
Good answer.
All right, so
Okay.
I think everybody has their,
Yeah, I think
and the
we're good with
consultants are
that.
welcome to talk
And then-
offline.
So, John, you've got a lot of homework, so
Thank you all.
you bet. Have a good
Have
night.
a good evening, everybody.
See you later.
See
Bye,
you next
Natalie.
time.
Thank you.
Bye, Liz. Yeah.
All right, so I think, let's see, did 30 minutes fun? So 401 Route 17, Gray Barn. What's up, Mike?
Good evening. Is that Boston College?
Yes.
Oh.
Should have worked.
Take that off. He's like, oh, shit.
You got a Notre Dame shirt?
I kind of feel the same way about
All right, so Dave, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So Mike, you did get I trust you got a copy of the comment letter?
yes.
Okay. All right, so I know, and you, some of the board members probably saw this in some emails that went back and forth over the last few weeks. I know Mike had resubmitted a plan addressing just about all the comments that we had. There was still just a couple of things. So the first one was the fire lane striping that's on the north side of the building. I know, Mike, you had maybe a couple of feet off the edge of the building. We're just requesting that that be extended to 3 feet, and also that the applicant consider installing some measure of safety, such as a bollard or a planter, something. The issue is that the traffic is going to be coming along that side of the building. There's a door that opens into that traveled way, and we want to make sure that the traveled way is pushed away from the building, and that there's some measure of protection so that somebody swings open the door, car doesn't hit it, doesn't hit a person. So that was
unless-
one of the comments.
Yeah, I mean, unless you were, I'm- okay, so then,
Yeah, well, I'll make those adjustments. There's no harm in making that 3 feet wide and putting some bars at the very least near the door.
yeah, just so somebody
That's fine.
opening up and an employee coming in.
And then, so the design professionals advise that the applicant will continue to utilize the existing signage and no new building signs are proposed. And my comment here was that the application requires referral to the Orange County Planning Department for a review pursuant to GML 239. I think that actually came in.
We,
Or did we send it?
we sent it. It will be here, so I'll share the news when we
Okay.
get to me. I'll let you finish.
And then the last comment was that a public hearing is required for the amendment to the special permit.
So what can we do on that? It has to be public hearing.
So your 239 was sent on the 24th. Our next meeting is the 27th, 28th? 27th is Tuesday, right? Okay, 27th. Which means the 30 days will have lapsed. Now, is your office feeling ambitious? Because there is nothing preventing us, if we schedule it right now and Terry does the notice tomorrow morning, I have the notice drafted. You could have your public hearing on the 27th.
As long as I can get the mailings, I can get that done.
And the paper has to cooperate.
And I'm responsible for the paper or the villages?
Terry's gonna be in tomorrow, right?
We're hoping she's ill.
So if we can,
this evening.
assuming we can get it into the paper in our, because 10 days is Saturday. So it has to be by Friday.
Ryan said he's gonna help me with the mailing, so we're gonna make it happen.
So, if, assuming we can get that done, we can do it for the 27th. If not, it'll be for the June meeting.
I'll give it our best shot for the 27th. I mean, I think we can make it happen. The hardest thing here is gonna be getting it in the paper, but the mailings, that won't be an issue. We'll get that out the door.
So I have the notice, it's ready to go. Does the board have any objection to that?
I don't think so. You know, I'm not even sure who would come to this, you know, in that way, where it sits and what it's been for all these years, so.
Okay.
It's gotta be
So
done.
I will coordinate with Terry first thing in the morning.
Super.
And I'll copy you on that. So if we can get it done. If we can't get it done by Friday, we'll change the notice and it will get it done. We'll have the public hearing in June.
Right, so,
That's fair enough.
okay. Anything else, Dave? You're good?
Nope, that's it.
Liz, you got anything else?
The only thing, and I feel like I'm opening a can of worms, did you find anything on the arborvitae on the back? Was there any sort of easement that you could find?
No, I gave you guys all the mapping that
Okay.
I've had.
No, thank you.
My position is that we're not touching that. Any replacement, we may need a license agreement, which I would recommend to the village board for Reed Street, that we can accomplish, because that's our right of way. But we're not recommending that we're touching it. It is a variance, it is a condition of the variance that they be maintained. My position is we're not touching it. So, we can leave that for now. If you throw in a tree or two on your property in the back, that would be great, but, I know it's tight back there.
Yeah, I wasn't able to get it in the back, but I was able to get like one or two in the front.
Okay.
Along Reed Street, so.
Okay. I'm not so worried, it's not the replacement of trees, because you're not taking any trees down, so that doesn't trigger the one-to-one replacement, because you're replacing nothing, so that's zero. It's just the maintenance of an existing screening, and you're effectively relying on off-site screening. But again, we're not touching it.
Okay. Anything from you, Mike?
No, if the comments are minor, we'll make that adjustment as a condition, Bauer and widening of that fire line to 3 feet, and we look forward to the public hearing if the board's in agreement.
Okay. We're good?
Okay, we'll talk soon.
Yep, thank you.
Have a great night.
You guys have a great night. 581. Is that what's 581 Route 17.
He was here.
He
was
was here a few
here.
minutes ago, yeah.
Thank you.
Avi, how are you?
Good evening, sorry about that.
All right.
Avi Weinberg, Weinberg Women Engineering here on behalf of the applicant. We are pretty far along at this point, site plan development. This board has seen the project a bunch of times. I didn't even bring the board. It's really just a few minor stuff I wanted to talk about. We still have the subdivision part that we do plan on submitting shortly. I think the idea is that we want to get both of those, do one GML, one coordinated review, name deck, all that. I do just want to go through the comments. I guess one issue, there's a couple technical comments that I can work with Dave, but there's really just one thing I wanted to hash out again is the lighting. Which is one thing I really wanted to speak about.
The lighting.
Yeah, the lighting on the site
Mhm.
with the board. David, do you want to go through the comments or?
Sure, so I know at prior meetings you had mentioned that you were going to be putting shields on the lighting fixtures, and that I know that the calculations that are on the map don't reflect the use of shields. You're saying that they'd be adjusted in the field?
They don't, right, you can't model them. So again, these aren't shields, I've actually printed out, I don't know if this was handed out to the board, did you guys get these installation guides of the lighting?
The installation guides themselves.
Yeah, the installation, of the actual
I
lighting.
don't think we received that.
It was part of the submission, I don't know.
Yeah, I
I'll
think
tell you
I-
in a minute then, I'm not sure.
Okay, now, I don't expect everyone to review it in detail, but the one key,
Are these just for the existing fixtures or for the proposed?
no,
'Cause-
proposed, existing and proposed.
So you don't have proposed wall-mounted fixtures that you can have essentially zero cutoff on?
Yeah, so they are, this is part of it, so when we call it shields, they basically have, you go out there and test it, and there are different types of shields that they're not clip-on shields, they're actually part of the product, they're screwed in. And the way it works is you install them, and then you determine in the field, you go out there at night, and we have to ensure that there will be zero cutoff at the line. So while you can't really model that, the idea is that these types of lighting have these features that you can install the shields, we would go ahead.
Now, real quick, sorry, just a clarification. Are you saying you can adjust them when they're on there, or you'd have to change shields if it's not doing it completely?
I think it's more changing the shields, determining the right type of shields.
Okay.
that come with the
So
product.
am I hearing you correctly that you would accept a condition that we would install we would get a conditional approval, you would install the shields, but if the shields didn't do what they needed to do, that we'd redo them? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, we would make sure.
We'd replace
This has been done before, where we go out, it's almost like an as-built survey type of thing, where we verify in the field that there's cutoff.
That's a you question, that's not a me question.
Yeah, I don't think I'd have an issue with that. I think there were some other things about the plan, though. I know some of the intensities under some of the lighting fixtures were rather high. Yeah. You've got spots where it's, I think, 30-foot candles and
Right.
I don't know, it just seems like you're sort of lighting up certain areas and.
Right.
Yeah, and they're internal too, that's not just on the borders.
Yeah.
Right, no, I understand.
There's hot spots all over.
Yeah.
So, and then, the village code does have certain criteria here about the color, the color temperature, the illumination values.
Right. So, yeah, we will adjust, obviously, to just get this comment letter in today, we will adjust that
Yeah.
and address
So,
those
a
issues.
quick question. It surprises me that with the technology we have, you actually have to go out there. They can't tell you that this shield won't block that light or will block that
So I
light?
was wondering the same thing, I'm not the one that deals with the lighting, it's more my partner, and this is the way he's been doing it for years, and I'm not it's him, we have a technician that works on the lighting program. I definitely wanna explore that, because I had a hard time leaving that as well, but the way they've been doing that is, I'm curious, David.
Well, I don't do the lighting designs myself in the office. We have people in the office that do that. But my understanding is that, yeah, they can specify what the fixtures are, what the throw is. They can make all sorts of adjustments to do that.
With the shields and all that.
It's built into the model. So when you get I forget what there's a file that you usually get from the manufacturer, and that basically accounts for what the cutoff is. And they can specify what individual luminaires are within the fixture.
Right.
But again, I don't do that myself. We have people in the office that do that.
Right.
But that's what the software, I believe, is capable of now. But
Right.
I mean, again, the other part though is I think there are some existing fixtures there that you might not have that information on, because they're probably older.
Right.
So if you're retrofitting a shield to that, you
Right.
know,
That I
that's
could see.
understandable.
Right, that I could
But
see.
that's why I was saying the new fixtures, typically, we
No,
would,
right,
we would see that, but
Right. So we can do that, and again, we obviously would make sure we would go out there and measure to make sure that they're cut up. Just a couple of other comments, one thing, we'll clarify. One other question I actually do have about is the ADA requirements. You wrote a comment that we have to remove existing asphalt ramps. Now you guys know between those two buildings, there's sort of that ramp there on that angle. We left that area there because, the idea was, obviously we did all these landscaping improvements as you guys have all seen. There was that one area which we felt, why do we have to literally rip up every nook and cranny in this site? My question to you is that ramp that's there, it looks to me like it's concrete, and the building has a permit now, which means it's ADA compliant. So could we leave, I'm assuming you're referring to that ramp
well,
between the two existing buildings?
there is a note on the plan that it's to be removed, I believe, right?
Well, no, there's one that's actually asphalt, I know you're talking about, that has to be ripped out.
Right, okay.
That's, yes.
Yes.
But then there's also on that angle, there's a ramp with railings.
Yeah, we would just want to take, excuse me, take a look at it to make sure that it is
I'll-
ADA
I'll
compliant.
send you a picture.
And I know we had asked for elevations there to confirm that. But again, we can take a look at it in the field if you want. We can meet out there and
Yeah, we can
just see
try
if
that,
it's,
provide you
if it
more
is compliant.
information,
If
right.
it's not though, you'd want to make a modification to it.
100%. Like I said, we assume, that there is a permit, it's operating under C of O. And then the other stuff, we will just, there are some minor comments that we will modify the plans. And that's that, I just, like I said, just more about the lighting that we get here.
Okay. What was one question? What was there's a section that you have
Pavers?
permeable, I think it's permeable pavers
Yes.
at the corner of the building?
We were just trying to reduce impervious area as much as possible, that'll be instead of sidewalk. If it's more complicated than it is, we'll just put sidewalk.
But there's, leading up to that, I think it's just a landscaped area, isn't it?
What happens is, right now, there's an area blocked off, that area is just paved over, and on the adjacent property, there is a walkway there.
So, okay.
So we just wanted to preserve that walkway, we thought we put pervious pavers, we could easily switch that to concrete, but it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I didn't think the map showed the walk on the other side, but I guess you're saying it's,
Yeah, it wasn't
okay.
picked up on the survey, but yeah, I
Okay.
can show you a picture of that. And same thing also, we showed pervious pavers coming out of the back door, which is mainly an emergency exit. We just thought that's something a little nicer than concrete. I guess we could put a detail on that, but that's the idea behind it. We're
Okay.
underneath development coverage, we don't have an issue. We just wanted to, it was just a feature that we thought was nice.
So maybe what we'll do, Avi, is just schedule a site visit. We could take a look at the ADA access in the front, and we can take a look at where that walkway would presumably connect.
Yeah. And maybe we could do the lighting, once we're there.
Mhm.
Okay, and like I said, we do plan on submitting, for subdivision, the subdivision map,
Mhm.
so we can really move this to the more public setting.
So, yes, from a procedural standpoint, we're really at a pause point until we have that, assuming you want to proceed with the subdivision. If it were just site plan, we could start moving things forward. Just a couple of quick comments, some of these may be repeats. We did receive a local determination on February 27th for 239. And just be aware, the board should just be aware that unlike site plan applications, because this is being treated as a subdivision and we're processing it as a subdivision, seeker actually has to be complete before we can have the public hearing. Because under the state law, that the authorizing statutes, to be a complete application, your seeker has to be done. It's a little bit convoluted. Most people go, I want to have my public hearing first. If something comes out of the woodwork that's completely blows away all of your prior seeker findings, so we're going to make a seeker determination before we schedule the public hearing. If something comes up in public hearing that completely blows away something in your
So another
finding,
public hearing.
you reopen the seeker, revise the seeker, so you're not completely bound by it, but it is a procedural, there's a case, what is it, Kittredge versus Liberty, that's well-known, and it just, anytime there's a subdivision, it's the Kittredge rule. So just be aware of that. Avi, I'm gonna pick on you ever so slightly, but I pick on all applicants. This is a nitpick for all my applicants. Anytime you update a document that has an applicant signature, you can't rely on the old signature. Get a new notary. So, particularly when we're updating signed applications, what, did I whisper? So anyway,
Yes, we will do that. There's
so
a lot
just-
of procedural,
I
I
just-
almost have to cover the check yes, Chris, I will make sure that we, get this all cleaned up.
I give that comment to anyone that just updates the piece of
Yes.
information without updating the signature, so you're not alone. And I think that's really it for me, so
Yeah.
there's not
Okay.
too much, so.
Maybe I could just pull it, you could just pull the plan on the screen, just to clarify.
State plan?
Where she keeps it.
Friday,
Do a deep dive. Let's do it.
Roll my eyes.
Hang on one sec.
go up, yeah, right there.
That folder.
It's a very sensitive,
Helen.
Oh, her mouse is beyond sensitive. Her mouse, like you move it and it's like 6 pages later.
Let me try it.
There we go, that's it right here.
So JL sealed? No, if you go
Oh, back?
Yeah, back. So the one that says JL sealed at the end, that one, yeah, that one.
Right here?
Site plan, no, down
That
one,
one, that's it.
Yeah, right there.
yeah, on that.
Why is it full empty?
It says empty.
Yeah, that's what I came across before.
There you go. Files plans, notes, review.
That's weird.
I think I have the map, Bobby, if that's what
Oh,
you're
okay.
looking for. Probably.
Yeah, I can pull it up, I've got
think
it
I-
up.
All right, I just wanted to clarify which handicap.
I just have a quick question for you. So, in that parking lot, I know you have some good, nice ideas for like a bit of a beautification of that parking lot, right? A lot of those shaded areas, I don't have to plan it for you, but a lot of the shaded areas, are those like kind of raised, what, grassy bed areas, or what? Is that where the light poles are gonna be?
No, I mean, just, we would have trees coming in.
Okay.
The idea would be just, you know, we have room for them, and then we have to revise which types, your engineer was nervous about them spreading beyond, but,
Because my only comment, and to take this if it will, is that I see a lot of times that people with the great intentions of making it nice, and what happens is the person plowing, they're in and out of there quick, right? So if they're raised, they're hitting them, they're chipping them, and they stay like that for a long time. Or the intention is the mulch looks good in the very beginning, and then within half a summer, no one's weeding it, no one's picking it out. So I
what we're
just,
trying to do in general, with landscaping is minimal maintenance is required.
Yeah.
You know,
I see the intentions always start off good, and then it looks like crap after a year, or 2 years, or, you know. So.
stuff we do generally.
Belgian block, it's knocked over, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Here, Dave, I got the plans up there.
No, these are.
I just wanted to clarify again, so it's this ramp that's, you know,
Right.
verified. This is piece of asphalt we know is coming out. It's this that looks like a nice concrete ramp.
So right here,
Yeah, that's what you see, I did the
So-
striped.
so this is coming out.
That little piece of asphalt is coming out. That's not compliant, that I'm aware. But then we would just keep the striped area, so that they could go up this ramp that's there. It's got railings on both sides. And we could go out to the side.
I think we just want to confirm that it's still providing ADA access, that's suitable.
Yeah, and we just leave that out.
Pardon me?
Okay.
You know. Right.
Okay, so I will correspond with Mr. Higgins about the lighting and ADA access and resubmit you.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one, Avi.
Good job.
All right, 3:30 stage. Hello, David. So Dave, do you want to start us?
Absolutely, Jens are in first place, life is good. Right? So, we made our submission, to you, it's outlined in the cover letter. We addressed many of the items that were, brought up at the last meeting, especially regarding, the double striping of the parking spaces, so we showed that. We, identified the property line and the fence relationship, and how we're able to establish 3 trees for landscaping to screen the neighbors from the property, and that was the
most area that we have, there's not much more we could do, but except for placing those 3 white cedars there. We also revised the renderings to be consistent with the site plans. We took out the playground equipment. We made the adjustments showing the retaining wall and its relationship to the property line of the townhouses that are next door as a neighbor, and the drop in elevation of our property. Also, I believe we added the ADA signage. We also identified the emergency vehicle access. We have submitted it to the fire department. We reached out again to Nick to review that, so we haven't gotten an answer back yet, but we're hoping to get that done, or get an answer from them shortly. And that's basically everything that we have in the submission.
Okay, Dave, did you wanna?
So I don't know if you want to go through all of them or just hit the high points.
Yeah, hit the high points.
Okay. So number 3 on the comment letter was a report has been provided by Creighton Manning, which discusses trip generation, parking, and potential impacts. It is understood that the evaluation has been provided to Kimley Horn, the village's traffic consultant, for review and comment. So I know.
And with that, I am so happy to have our traffic consultant share the podium with me for a little while.
Number 7, a landscaping plan has been provided consisting of 38 boxwood shrubs, 13 white cedar trees, and 6 dogwood trees. Planning board should review the plan for adequacy. So this was added along the northern property line, basically between the proposed parking lot and the adjacent residential structure. Number 8, the design consultant's response letter indicates that the loading area for furniture store will be along the existing retaining wall on the northern edge of the parking lot. The submitted plan does not depict the loading area. Plan should provide a designated area for loading and unloading that complies with Village Code 200-45D, which requires loading spaces are to be located more than 200 feet from residential district boundaries. Based upon email correspondence received from Village Building Inspector Watson, while use of the existing loading area could continue as it was intended, relocation of it would require that the applicant submit to the Village Zoning Board of Appeals. So I do know that you've provided a turning movement for a delivery truck for the furniture, which is actually in the front of the building.
Correct.
There's a note on the plan that talks about how that would be scheduled, but also there's parking along in the front for the furniture store that would be blocked off by that truck, correct?
Well, in the recess portion of the building, not in the portion that fronts Stage Road.
Right, it's part of the parking that's relied on for the furniture store would be blocked off.
So
Okay.
you plan on having all deliveries through the front?
Yes.
And what is the traffic pattern of the truck coming in there?
We showed 2 diagrams. One was a left turn entry with a left turn exit, and the other was a right turn entry with a right turn exit. It's on Plan C 4.1.
So now, but all those trucks would have to back into that area at some point, right? They're backing into
Yes.
yeah. So then at some point, they're gonna be facing the townhouses that are right there, right?
Correct.
And what time are those deliveries?
We would limit it to either prior to the daycare center being opened or after.
And what are the hours?
I had them listed on the plan. We
9, like is it 9 or is it 7?
8 to 9, 5 to 6. The daycare operation would be about from 9:30 to 10 to about 3:30 to 4.
So the deliveries would be after that, yeah. Because when you look at that site there, the townhouses and that driveway are pretty much on level right there. Everyone was saying last time we heard that there's a good steep, they're up a lot higher, but it's really not. So like if you're gonna go there.
Not in the front of the parking lot.
Yeah, in the front of the parking lot, like when
Right.
just off of a stage,
Right.
right? Yeah. So if that truck's coming in, and if it's backing into the glass things there, it has to face those townhouses right there, and those townhouses are literally right there.
Maybe a wood
Like
fence.
elevation.
Hang on, when you say back it in, Keith, are you saying back?
So here's the townhouses right
Yes.
here, and here's the building right here, right?
Yeah.
So then, here's stage, right?
Yeah.
They have to come in, they have to go like this and turn like this, right? They have to come and go this way.
if they're backed in toward that side. Is that what you're saying?
Either way, well, at some point, they're coming in this way, right? And then-
So they're coming down stage,
Yeah,
you're
come
saying?
in like this, and then, yeah, if they make the right-hand turn, right, they're gonna go down and then back in like this.
Yeah,
Because I'm telling, I looked at it, and any which way you
it's
slice it,
difficult.
the lights have to face the townhouses that are right here.
What?
Right.
And they're pretty much on.
How about a 6-foot-high wood fence?
Well, that's what we're talking about,
Right.
screening and
Right,
stuff like that.
right.
And I think Dave was saying that only the screening can be all the way at the down
Now,
below,
Yeah.
where the deliveries used to be, but now the deliveries are up here and there's no screening.
Yeah,
Well, don't you have a turnaround? It doesn't show it here, but at the bottom of that hill, don't you have a turnaround there?
For the for bus traffic.
Buses, not
But it'd only be for bus.
Correct.
It wouldn't be able to accommodate a tractor trailer?
Well,
Off
let's
school
bring-
hours,
yeah.
you know, you're saying when you're gonna be getting
Well, yeah, so you're talking about them backing in and delivering it in the front.
They're
So
saying
if-
they're doing
But
all
if you do that, it triggers
Sounds like they're gonna go to the ZBA.
that's a
variance
new
for it,
unloading area.
I think.
That means,
Well, no, that's an existing.
Was that determined yet officially?
But that's not
Already in the
existing.
EAF.
That loading is existing, that's what, how the cars brought their, when it was a car dealership, that's how they brought their cars into.
Okay.
But the-
That's a showroom.
Yeah.
I don't think that's considered delivery,
So,
that's a
can I just-
showroom area.
We have a determination from the building inspector that the current proposal, which is to have a loading space, essentially a free floating, loading space on the northwest corner of the site is not pre-existing, and that it does not meet the separation requirements. That's the written
right,
determination.
so that's
of the
what I
buil-
was wondering.
That's
like,
what
why
this
are we-
board has to go off of, is that written determination.
Right, so that's a moot conversation then.
So then you can't do deliveries in front.
You can't do that then.
Unless they go get relief from the ZBA.
Okay.
They have two choices. They can get relief from the ZBA, or they can use the existing,
Delivery.
the existing loading bay, which is where the daycare is
I think it's
proposed.
Okay. Right. But that's not what you're saying, right, Dave?
Correct.
Okay, so that's the building inspector.
You know, yes, we did receive that. It contradicts the previous determinations that we received from Jim Cox regarding the front loading area that was being used. So, you know, I mean, we'll just acknowledge that, and we do, and we did anticipate that this was a concern, and we were proactive in getting determinations from the building department at that time to render a decision.
But we have to go off what the building inspector is telling us.
I can't tell from, which is the question I posed to Mr. Watson. I could not tell what area Mr. Cox was referring to, other than the loading bay was pre-existing. There was a pre-existing loading bay
On the side.
on the
Yeah,
side.
right.
So I could not determine that. Mr. Cox is no longer with the village. He's retired as building inspector. I therefore sought a clarification, and Mr. Watson went out to the site, met with the property owner, discussed how he intended to use it, and issued the determination. The applicant is free to appeal that determination to the zoning board of appeals, but that's the determination that we have, particularly in light of the fact that there was confusion as to what Mr. Cox was referring to. I couldn't tell that, and also there's no loading area designated on the site plan, so it would be difficult for Mr. Cox to say that a specific loading area which isn't designated on the site plan is pre-existing.
Okay,
So he's not here
right,
to clarify his letter.
right.
He did previously issue a letter many, I think, a year ago when before the daycare was a glimmer in our eye. It was that loading zone could continue to be used as a pre-existing nonconformity.
Right. So that's kind of where it stands. On that,
On that.
yes.
Let's talk about that further. I mean, we have Ken here, we can talk about the maneuverability and the traffic.
I think though, too, Dave, and I could be wrong, but I think this is the case, if that becomes the loading area, let's just say this, it triggers that other, you need a 200-foot
Correct.
space, you know what I mean? So,
Which can't be satisfied.
but, anyway, go ahead, Ken.
Also,
And that
you
would
can't have a
trigger
loading
zoning
zone,
board review.
you can't have a
Yeah,
loading zone.
either
in
way.
the front yards.
You know,
That's
again,
quite a lot.
we have all the information in front of us, you know, not all of
Yes,
us are
well.
agreeing, so, the decisions with the board, you know, obviously, if we get referred to the zoning board, we would have to make that appeal and get that variance.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to go off what the building inspector's telling us, so we would go off of his interpretation, which I guess he spoke to Elizabeth. And, so that's what, so that would, we would refer you then to the zoning board for that, because they would need to give you the variance. And then also, I guess the 200-foot, you'd have to go for that too, so you'd have, right. So-
There's also, I'm double checking, you may have to go because I don't believe you're allowed to have a loading zone on the street side. But let me check, I'm checking that.
Well, that's being checked, and aside from the distance, we can talk about the actual maneuvers, which were on those plans, C4 one. And basically, the truck could come in and do kind of like a K-turn, you know, pull over, do the loading, and then that little alcove in front of the main.
Yeah, but the red, if it's red, it might not work though.
If it's red, it won't work.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
There
you go. We're
Switch
good.
colors, huh?
You put the multicolored back.
Can you guys see that?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
entrance to
Yeah.
that.
So coming in here, backing in, and then this little nook here, there's doors, and I think there's doors right there, and then pull back out. And then depending on the direction that it's coming from, but it would use those two spaces to complete, you know, its turn. It wouldn't have enough room to go into the very back. The circle at the rear, and we could check it, but it would certainly, overlap the island in the middle of that circle. But that's not to say that we couldn't design that circle to be mountable, you know, and have the trailer end of the tractor trailer go around
Be
it.
able to go around.
So that could be something that we look into, particularly if there's an issue with having the loading kind of in the front.
And you're expecting that tractor trailer driver to be really good too.
Yeah.
For him to do a K-turn into there, he's gonna know.
Right.
They're
But
not
also-
all like that.
No.
So Ken, what if there's cars, just theoretically, what if there's cars
Yeah,
parked in those
parking
parking spots?
They're getting hit.
They would be blocked in for, you know, the amount of time that it takes for them to do that loading. The loading times would be outside of the arrival dismissal time. So there could be some loading during the middle of the day, like, you know, 11, noon, something like that. But it's outside of when kids are coming and going, you know, from the facility.
Yeah, so my more concern is the townhouses that are there, and if you're delivering these trucks early in the morning or late in the afternoon, the lights that are gonna
Find it
be
later.
literally facing their houses as they're like, you know.
Right to the left of the entrance he's talking about.
Yeah.
Go into the layout.
Yeah, if you look at the very,
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
that right
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
exactly right there.
That's
Yeah,
the
but
same.
there's no way to avoid the lights going in that right there, you know, because you're backing in. There's no, doesn't matter if you come right turn, left turn, your lights are pointing directly at their house.
I mean, it's either slats or a 6-foot wood fence. At least that's stopping the light, like you, to your point. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
Need something.
Something would have to be
Yeah,
there
yeah.
to screen that.
Right.
Now, it might not be vegetation, like you said, but it could be, it might have to be something else. If that's where you go.
Can they load in the front, Liz? Did you
I'm
find that?
not finding it, so I might be confusing another code,
Oh,
but
okay.
definitely, there is a restriction, because it adjoins, a residential, the 200 feet. So, that's the biggest, and also, you have a free floating loading zone. That's not,
With parking spaces in there and stuff too, yeah.
It's
So-
definitely not optimal.
Yeah, I know.
it's the applicant's choice.
Sure.
That they can either return to the original loading bay, which would then solve your problem because it's further down the hill, and away from those
Right.
houses. Or go to the ZBA to appeal the determination.
All around, because you
Then-
don't have to do a K-turn on the street and all that.
Then eliminates the daycare, yeah, right?
But that's the problem, yeah.
Can't have both.
Well, no,
If you're loading there.
But, yeah, so the delivery place has to get taken out. The pre-existing delivery place has to get taken out to use the daycare. Like, do you have to get rid of that, or is that staying there?
No, we were getting rid of it.
Getting rid of it, okay.
Yes, for the daycare facility, yes.
So that's, like, that is essential for the daycare, is to get rid of the existing loading, right?
There's another, to answer your question, yes,
Yeah,
Keith.
okay.
There's another plan, I guess we can't move it, C2. It shows actually the shadow line of the daycare center
Sorry.
within the footprint of the building. Yeah, kind of, it'll answer your question.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe, no, this is one of one.
This is one of them.
Mm-hmm. It's one of one. Yeah, we're not
Oh,
gonna find
you
it.
only have one of one. It should be like 1 of 6.
I have it.
Well, none of us use this kind of a computer. It's like antiquated.
Well, Keith, let's answer your question.
Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, come on.
It's green, maybe it's the red that works, and the green doesn't work. We had one of those,
And they took it away.
where'd that long extendo go? We had like a long extendo.
I think we find the other.
Oh, there we go, yeah, yeah.
The little white tag on it, the little pointer thing, you know?
Oh, here we go.
You know, I had this just for the village of Monroe.
Jeez.
Well, in,
I can hold this.
yeah, in one
That's
of
his
the,
review, and then the other.
just to help, with Keith's comments, the daycare is out in the footprint of the building.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, and it's one of one.
the hash area right here. And that definitely does include the existing.
Okay, delivery side. Yeah.
So while they're looking, could we maybe speak of like the traffic pattern? If in fact the daycare can work and they're getting dropped off and the time and all of the turnaround and the times and the amount of cars and all that, has that been?
Well, I think it's just buses, right? Because they
They said no buses. I thought it was no buses,
No,
right?
it's all buses.
It's all buses.
It's all buses.
It's no
That's-
personal traffic, it's not like little house.
The applicant is relying on 100% busing of their student
Yeah,
population
all
to mitigate and that's the discussion we're here to have. That's why we have John and Ken here.
So, I mean, even from my own experience, my kids went to daycare and I drove them to school, my wife picked them up and brought them home at the end of the day, or we did vice versa.
Yeah.
And all the kids were there, dropped off, their parents. This facility is different in the sense of, the operator has a facility in Brooklyn called Top Spot, TOTSPOT, and they do 100% busing. So we did try and find some examples of facilities that did busing. We found two, I think I mentioned it in my letter in previous submission. We found another that used to be a daycare at the intersection of Spring and Freeland,
Yeah.
County Road 105.
Yeah.
It closed, I think, for a while, but it was reopened as a early childhood education. I called over there. They do 100% busing. Aside from like, hey, my kid's got a doctor's appointment.
Sure.
They're not riding the bus. I'm bringing them in later.
You missed the bus.
But they do 100% busing of special needs kids. Similar, but a little bit different.
What ages are they, do you know? Ken?
They were a little bit older. I think they were school age.
Right.
But they weren't, this facility would be, 6 months to 3, 4 years old, so.
So
really
they're putting
anything to-
6-month-olds on a bus?
So New York State requires, it's allowed,
Mhm.
but New York State requires that there be aides on the bus. You can't rely on the bus driver if, kids.
Yep.
If a kid is screaming or needs a bottle or something, the bus driver can't pull over and do that. So there has to be supplemented with additional people on the bus, to
I think, Ken, part of the problem was, a couple meetings ago, we had invited the applicant to, at least provide in a narrative their particular, because you're right, you drop your kids off, I certainly am thinking that I drop my kids off, and that's the example that we have to go by, and that's what we have in our heads. And so we had invited the applicant to give us a greater detail into the specifics of this particular daycare, and we have, at least I have not seen that narrative beyond a simple sentence that we're gonna bus the kids. So I think it's, from a planning board perspective, we're having a hard time seeing it because it's just something you generally don't see. And the reason is, if we can't reasonably rely on that bus because you're going, okay, it's so far out of the norm, we go, okay, go do the traffic count at the light, because we gotta treat it the other way, that it's gonna be the norm, which is what we're used to seeing, which is parents dropping off all of those kids. So I think in the absence of that narrative, the board has struggled to understand how all busing works at this particular age group. So I think that's been, something we called for, that would be helpful to the discussion. But like, when you say you're gonna put a 6-month-old on a bus, I'm like, are you out of your mind? I wanna use more choice words, but there could be possibilities, and we just simply don't have that experience. So I think that narrative to support the record, we don't even know who really, we know that the property's owned by, an entity owner, which is fine, but we don't even really know who's going into this particular site. Is it special needs kids? Is it non-special needs kids? What's the situation? And we just don't have that information.
And I tried to outline as much as I knew in kind of my letters
Right.
before, at least relative to the operations, surrounding, traffic. But I was able to talk to the operator today and find out more. And like my description of it, infants all the way up to toddlers before they're school age and they get into the actual school system. The staff would be on the bus to help those parents put the kids on, strap them in. The little ones are in car seats, infant seats, just as you would put the base in your car and plug them in and out of your vehicle. And then the older ones would graduate up to what are booster seats. They're not fully strapped in, you're more seatbelt, but a little bit different. And they would come in. The buses themselves would be scheduled to be staggered a little bit. It's not like there's a bell and everyone has to be there at that time. They don't have that kind of stringent arrival pattern as a school would. But those buses would come in, drop off along the side of the building closest to the north side. Do that. Obviously, you would have some staff already there at the facility, opening it up, getting everything ready. The bus would then make the U-turn around the circle, and then similar but reverse in the afternoon. Buses come in, load up each individually, and as they're loaded, make the U-turn back out, and then going through the rear.
The size of the buses, are they the shorter ones?
The shorter ones?
Yeah, you're not going with the big ones, right?
No.
And do you know how many children that they're gonna anticipate being in that place? 30, 60?
Yeah.
I think it was up to about 120 students, kids.
Wow.
So you would have different rooms. Some would be infant, so you've got a room full of cribs, for those kids. And then as those kids graduate through, getting older, they move up into different rooms with more, age-appropriate toys and everything else. The infants, you've got a wall full of cribs, and then you have also a wall full of high chairs, to feed them and everything else. Move over into the older kids, and you don't have high chairs anymore. You have a little table with the little chairs, and they can sit there and do those kind of activities. So the daycare itself has the ability to have that child through those different age brackets until they get up to the school age and get that curriculum.
So how many buses would you anticipate at what point dropping off within that 20-minute
What is it, like
window?
20 kids per bus?
15, 20?
Plus chaperones.
Now, don't forget you have car seats.
That's 8, 9, 10
And,
buses.
yeah, so you're losing bus spot, what I mean?
It's gonna spill into 17, and then trying to get out of there, trying to get the left out, I mean, Seems,
Seems a stretch.
So like you're looking at.
The other thing, you're,
Seems a big stretch.
if we're approving it for one use, nobody else is gonna use it for busing children in.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
As a, you know, and then you have the loading thing, which is,
Well, yeah, I
Two
mean,
together.
I would anticipate there would only be like 10 buses then, right? I mean, if you get at least,
Not even.
yeah, maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
So
maybe.
that's not a lot, yeah, yeah. For 100.
but with the chaperones, don't forget, if you're doing almost a chaperone per 2 students, you know, it could be 10. I think it could easily be 10 buses.
Yeah, but I mean, 10 buses doesn't seem.
And it's
Well,
not
Doesn't seem like
staggered,
a lot, yeah.
I think it was.
it's not staggered, the arrival time?
That's the,
Well, before we go too far, 10 buses,
That's the top number.
you don't need a chaperone for every 2 kids.
Yeah.
It might be 2 chaperones on the bus for the whole bus.
it's 35
And
square
then,
foot
so,
a kid.
you know, they're adults, they're gonna sit in a regular seat, but smaller kids, you can fit a lot more on
You
them,
mean
obviously.
in
because
the
they're
street tournament,
narrower
That's how you
spaces.
Well, you have the car seats
22
in there,
children,
don't forget,
right?
too. Yeah, so that might,
Based
you
on
might
the
lose
square footage
spots.
they have,
Whatever,
it shows
I mean, you're not looking at
122
like
children.
15, 20 buses, you know. You're looking at-
Well,
Yeah, it's
that's
not- it's
half
not
of
where
the
you're
floor
set.
square footage,
Excuse me?
but that's half of the floor, but
Staggered,
Staggered, yes.
are they at staggered arrival times?
Right.
Should I check the
So,
number of students based
they
It's
don't
not
have
all at
footage
8 o'clock, it's,
exactly.
okay,
think
so it'll be
what-
staggered.
what,
at
so
8
what
o'clock.
are the times between?
I think it's like between 9 and 9:30, 10 o'clock. So in that time frame, the buses, you know, they can schedule it. So if you live on this bus route, you guys are going to get picked up at, you know, 8:30, and the bus will circulate and come. If you live on this bus route, you're going to get picked up at 8:45, and it'll make the rounds, just like a school district
Yeah,
does.
that was just-
You know, one bus, you know, might go out 3 times, one for the elementary run, one for the middle school, and one for the high school.
Okay.
You know, it could be similar to that.
That'll make it much more manageable at least.
It's almost necessary just because, if you don't do that, you have kids just sitting on the bus at the back of the line, like, waiting. And, you know, to take each kid, I mean, you're not gonna pick up a whole handful of kids and walk out with them. You're taking one carrier, maybe 2 at a time, and bringing them inside.
It's gonna take a little time to get them on and off, because they're not just walking off like the high school kids, you know what I mean? Yeah, you gotta have people carrying them.
So that operation itself means, all right, let's have 1 or 2 buses here at a time, unload those, and then schedule.
So you don't have the backup of buses getting out onto
Right.
State Road, yeah.
And similar to, you know, in the afternoon, when buses for a school show up, they're all sitting there waiting for the school bell dismissal, and then all the kids rush out and get on. They don't have to do that here.
And none of these buses are taking 2 trips?
It might just depend on the
area.
route.
Proximity
the
of
area
everything.
going. You know, so, this facility is planned to help serve the Jewish community here in Monroe and in KJ. So they're not driving to Rockland, they're not driving out to Goshen or, you know, farm, you know, districts. It's all probably within, you know, a 10 or 15 minute, you know, radius around the facility.
Yeah, I think the bigger issue for me is the mixed use of, and not having a loading zone, and then you're gonna have these buses coming in, kids get sick, parents come pick them up because they're gonna have to. You're not gonna send a bus to get a kid if they're sick, or if you have problems with them. So that's more parents coming, trucks there, no loading zone, forward, backward, and everything else. I don't think the use is built for that, I just, you know, and they're gonna have to go to the zoning board anyway, but.
And it's tractor trailers delivering?
Yeah, not the giant highway kind, but, you know, the smaller kind that you might see it.
Like box trucks.
No, that's-
Yeah, certainly box trucks, and then, they call them a WB-40, it's just a engineering term for the size of them, but.
Yeah, but they're normal size, like trucks, they're long
Yeah,
trucks.
if you think of like a soda tractor trailer, you know, a Coca-Cola truck,
Right.
you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think for purposes
Yep.
of advancing the project, there's 2, and I call them warm and fuzzies. One issue, well, actually, there's 1 warm and fuzzy. The first issue is the applicant's gonna have to go to the ZBA to appeal that determination and resolve the loading issue, or unless they can find an alternate solution that meets the code, but right now, the proposal that they have per our building inspector doesn't meet the code. That's issue 1. The warm and fuzzy issue is with the discussion that Mr. Worsted's provided tonight, are we comfortable as a board with the overall scheme that the busing is there to mitigate? Because if it's not, we have to direct the applicant to do further traffic analysis, not on the mitigation. I don't want to put ideas in the board's head. I think some of the information that was discussed tonight, if that could be reduced down to the record, will certainly facilitate that position of the busing. You know, that information wasn't, you know, we've been asking who's going to be operating this, and this is the first time I've heard, you know, the operator has a facility somewhere else.
We get a lot done when I come here.
What?
We get a lot done when I come here.
You see? If kind of that discussion could be reduced to writing, but I think we need to give the applicant direction whether we're going to.
I'd like to hear from John, because John kind of looked at that, so if you want to, you know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, the board has requested how the operation will work, and Ken has kind of given it to you verbally. There's probably 120 children. They're using smaller buses, which probably have a seating capacity of 20, 25. That's a number that Ken could put down. I'm not quite sure of the chaperone ratio, but let's say you had 15 kids on it, make it easy, 14 kids on a bus, and one for every two, so 14 and 2 is 14 and 2 is divided by 2 is 7, that's 21 per bus, right? So that's 14 kids, 14 into 120 is like, what's that?
It's like
Eight?
eight around there.
Yeah, so we're probably talking about 8 to 10 buses.
Yeah, that's
Right? Assuming that that's the way it operates. Right? And all of a sudden decide, you know what, we need to pick this guy up first, that guy second, and they could turn 10 buses into 20 buses if they decided to run them half full. I'm not saying that that's what they would do, but, you know, maybe you need an explanation as to what it is. If it's 10 buses, and if they generally are staggered, because there isn't, it's an unusual circumstance. A normal daycare, you bring your kids at the time that's convenient for you because you're going to work, and you pick them up at a time that's convenient for you because you're coming back from work. Unlike a school, whereas if you're there because the bell goes at 9 o'clock, and the kid has to be there at 9 o'clock, and you pick them up, it's a little different, but the bell goes at 2:30, some of them stay, some of them don't. So it will be staggered, maybe not quite as staggered, because they're serving a more community. It's kind of a unique population, right? And where people have slightly different habits, so they might be more organized and get more of the kids there at the same time. I don't know. It's still going to be a small number of buses, so it's more than likely going to work. So the issue really is more a legal issue than a traffic issue. Oh, by the way, the one qualifier is that there should be no trucks coming in. They can be parked there. There's no trucks coming into or going out or moving around on the site during the prime delivery hours. I understand that you could say, you know, drop off is from 8:30 to 10:30, and pick up is from 3:30 to 6:30, and so now you have this window in the middle that you could have trucks drop off and pick up, and somebody could come by and say, you know, I need to take my kid because their father fell off a ladder or whatnot, right? That's fine, but what you don't want is you don't want the buses coming and going, and a truck arriving at, and what's the truck going to do? There's all these buses, you know, so you need to make sure that that's part of the record, that they can't do it when there's drop off and pick up activity. So it should work. And it should not have a traffic impact because you're putting people on buses, you're not having all these cars go back and forth. Then the question really for the board, which I think you've been wrestling with, is that's great and we hope it works, but what happens if it doesn't work? If they don't get 100%, if they don't get 90%, they're at 75%, right? Or if they decide, you know, this just isn't working, we're going to stop. Or we're going to violate, which I'm not saying that they would, but sometimes people do. It's like easier to ask for forgiveness and permission, right? So if you're comfortable that your code enforcement officer can violate them and has enough of a willpower to make it stick, then it shouldn't be a problem, right?
Mm.
If they have a problem, which we hope they wouldn't, their resolution would be to come back to this board and file a new application to change their upper method of operation, whatever it is they need to do. And at that time, they would do a traffic study, presumably because they were going to have more cars.
1 to 5 years.
There's still be moving parts, I think, I think this is never gonna work.
I do offer to the board that this is a special permit use.
Mhm.
So as part of the condition of your approval, you set a short special permit renewal. You'll know real quick, it's either gonna work or it's
That's
not.
good too.
Yeah,
And you put in the thresholds. And the applicant's going to take a risk that if it doesn't work, that they'll lose their special permit a year in.
so that gives you a lot more authority
Right.
than usual, yeah.
Because both uses are actually a special permit use in that district, so that's, if you're concerned about, you think it might work, but you're not sure, that's your recourse.
So I'm more concerned about the mixed use than I am about either of the other uses, like.
If it was one or
individual.
the other, yeah, if it was
Right,
one or the other, then you
Right.
wouldn't be having the issue.
Yeah, and I don't know that they're gonna get the relief from the zoning board, which would end that anyway, but, and get the relief, so if you got the relief for the building, the appeal for the interpretation, then you still need it for the 200-foot.
Well, they would make they'd make a simultaneous application. They'd make an application for an appeal of the determination. And I'm not gonna speak, if I was representing the
I think you need a
applicant,
public hearing for that too,
yes, you do.
because
But if I
residents
was
would
the
wanna be there.
applicant, I would make a dual application. One would be for an appeal/interpretation. And then 2 would be for the variance itself, for the
Right.
area variance itself. That's how, because then it's one process. So they might say, yeah, you lose and I'm not gonna speak for the ZBA, you lost on the appeal, the building inspector got it right, but we'll grant you an area variance of X feet. That's the applicant's prerogative, how they wanna proceed.
Right,
But they would do both simultaneously. It wouldn't make sense to do
right. Hmm?
one then the
Right,
other.
no, you need them both.
So,
Yeah.
so I think that the real question for the board is, we were having discussions, and what was coming up in the review of the memos is whether it's appropriate to do a deeper dive on the impacts on that light. If you believe the busing is appropriate in light of what you've heard tonight, and assuming that gets reduced down to the record, the answer is probably not. If you don't, then the answer is there should be a further traffic study to evaluate the impact on that light.
Yeah, and I think on that side, my issue would be how many trips are those buses gonna make? Because, you're picking 4 kids up over here, then you're gonna make another trip and getting another 6 or 8. What's the length of time, so that, I think that would need to be explained.
It should be elaborated in the record so that you can, this is an unlisted, we're processing this as an unlisted action. That would be either elaborated in your negative declaration, right? When you adopt that resolution, you put
Yeah.
forth your findings, you would want to include that information.
Right.
And then it can be included as part of the conditions that, the limit of students, the limit of buses, et cetera.
You could also put a requirement that when they come back for their special permit use, they provide you with the data to demonstrate that they're doing what they said they were going to do.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thoughts? Anybody more input?
I'm skeptical, I think we need a big traffic study to bolster in, but, those are what my thoughts are.
Yeah, it would have to be conditioned too, like if it wasn't, if we, and that you could do anyway, you could put that in. But if it was the busing, you'd have to make it a condition, it could only be that as well. You can't bring,
oh, no, it would be a detailed condition of site plan approval
yeah.
and special permit that students are to be bust.
I mean, you know, like buses, you know, right turn only pulling out of there, because you got 7, 8 buses pulling out at the same time trying to go left. So where would the bus garage be? Does that mean, does anybody know where the bus garage, like, when they're done at the drop off, they going back to a garage? Or they gonna automatically go right, because they're probably gonna go right, and then go down,
The old racetrack?
Mill Pond?
but, right, well, yeah, down there, I mean, not that it makes a huge difference, I'm just wondering.
That's
if it's
Maple.
Maple,
Maple?
and then they're gonna head down, you know, they go right under the bridge.
Under Mapes?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you even know where all the buses go afterwards.
It would largely depend on what they have scheduled for the day.
Yeah.
You know, so
There's
if,
truck traffic there, I think.
if that busing company were doing, you know, morning, elementary, you know, middle school, high school runs, got done with all that, and then said, all right, now that driver had done those runs and will come and do a daycare run, then,
Yeah,
you know, it's like, okay, now I have that driver, yeah, as a bus company, I have that driver working
he's already
4
out.
or 5 hours, yeah, rather than, hey, you did an elementary run, now go home. So it really depends on how they organize that.
Well, I think, you know, we're gonna have to go to the zoning board no matter what,
Yeah.
so. I think this is probably the next step, I guess.
Yeah, just a thought, I mean, because I'm going through this on other projects with other municipalities, so we go to the zoning board, they will not, it's my understanding they will not be able to make their final decision until the planning board completes seeker.
I don't think so, because I will double check, but I don't think that's the case here. Because usually an area variance is a type 2. So we have not coordinated review, because there were no other, I'll double check.
Because then, I mean, if it were the case, my request to the board would be, you know, approve to the complete seeker, you know, which would be a public hearing, and this traffic report. But if Elizabeth determines that that's not the case,
Right.
and the ZBA can render their decision, even though you have not completed seeker, then that's.
We did do a coordinated review.
Probably didn't include the ZBA, though.
Nope.
You said we did initially?
We did do a coordinated review, because we had DEC, Army Corps listed on there, and we have since eliminated them effectively. So,
I don't think the loading zone for us was an issue at that point. We didn't know when we started that.
no, because we just got the
Right, so
determination.
That's why they wouldn't have been in the coordination.
No, that's not an issue. I will coordinate with, Kelly Naughton on that one. It's definitely a chicken or an egg conundrum. Because it's hard for us to complete seeker if we don't know where the loading zone's gonna be.
Right, so that's gotta be.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you want to have them coordinated so that the plan that you're reviewing is going to match whatever may come out of the ZBA.
So one option is to uncoordinate it and have
them make a decision.
have them make their own independent decision. That's one option.
Could do that.
Or you
They'll
could,
they can, right, handle seeker on their own.
they could do their own
Yeah.
independent seeker of just their decision.
Mhm.
I'll call Kelly and talk to her about it.
So, we would need your referral letter, obviously, so, but this, you can update us in the next few days on what the, process would be?
Yeah, you don't need a letter. We do it as a matter of course, but you don't need a letter.
You have a letter from the building inspector already, I think,
You
referring
have-
you to the
We'll use
ZBA.
that we'll use that email, that's the.
Yep, that's your determination. Yep. So then I don't think there's any need to appear until you've at least had your initial meeting with the ZBA. Like I said, I'll call it, coordinate, coordinated review. I'll call her in the morning.
Just update us.
Mhm.
Good? All right?
And just in that due course, prepare a narrative, kind of top to bottom.
If you could take what you said, if you take what you said and put it on paper, that would make a much more substantive record, which would be helpful.
Yeah. Thanks, Ken, appreciate it. John, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
David, see you. And,
No minutes, right?
Yeah, you too.
So,
oh, wait a minute, it's all recording.
so, Mr.
Oh,
Chair,
no, we wouldn't do that till
Yeah,
the
meeting.
regular meeting. Yes.
the only applicant we have on for next meeting, if I got this right, and I'm just checking with you now, is 401 Gray Barn.
For this coming meeting?
For the May regular meeting.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. What else needs a formal
Because
action?
right, so 2/8's not coming now.
What did we do with the Pilates studio? We said that they were gonna have
They
a
didn't need to
hearing
come.
Oh, we're
next
gonna
month.
set the public hearing.
They're gonna
We'll
set
set
the
the public hearing. That's the other thing that's on the agenda. We'll set the public hearing,
Okay.
right? That one, we can
You
see.
could, or you could do that at the work session. You could do that at the work session next month too, I suppose.
If I have the upper, I'm
You'd
only,
rather do it well in advance, okay. Mhm.
because I literally have 12 hours to get this to paper. This may not work.
That's all it is? Okay.
Mike Morganti's may not work. I'm giving him the
But-
opportunity
Yeah,
to
to
push.
see, okay, yeah.
You make them put it all on paper, you make them put it out there. Hang on to that.
I get it.
So,
Yes, yeah.
we do have two applicants. to
All right,
set-
so 30 and 401.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm assuming Mike will figure out how to get it into the paper.
That's true. So it's setting two public meetings, basically.
Well, no, one is the public hearing, one is setting the public
Sorry,
hearing.
sorry, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so we're on.
For right now, if the notice doesn't
If he
work,
doesn't get it, then we can,
yeah.
When's the meeting in June? First meeting in June?
The first meeting in June
Yeah.
is,
do we have a motion to close our meeting?
I make the motion?